Thank you. All right. I hope that everybody has been having a good summer, and I'm not going to say the end of it because we still have a couple of weeks ahead officially, but it is great to see everyone again. Okay, so give me just a moment. I have too many windows open. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and begin with a slightly revised script as the legal basis for holding these meetings remotely has changed since our last remote meeting. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to the September 2nd Conservation Commission meeting. My name is Heather Charles Liss, and I'm the chair of the commission. This meeting is being held remotely pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. The information for joining the meeting by audio and/or video was posted with the agenda on the town's website, along with plans and other materials relevant to items on the agenda. This meeting is being recorded by the town in accordance with the open meeting law. And if any participant wishes to record the meeting, please notify me now so that I may inform all other participants. And the record can show that no participants expressed a wish to record the meeting. So in accordance with the town of Braintree's guidance for remote meetings, roll call votes must be taken on all matters requiring a vote. Commission members in attendance tonight include myself, Christopher Hayward, Vice Chair, Diane Francis, member, Peter Williams, member, and Hung Pham, our newest member. And so I would like to welcome Hung to the Conservation Commission. Thank you so much for joining us. It's always exciting to have new members. I would just also like to recognize that Hung has an incredible amount of experience in environmental regulation and stormwater regulation, which is wonderful. Working at the state, it looks like, for a long time. I'll let you go into as much or as little detail as you want. If you want to introduce yourself, feel free, but I also don't want to put you on the spot. And
Thanks.
sometimes we can also chat slightly more informally at the end of the meeting if you prefer.
Yeah, so a little bit about myself. I am the Stormwater Program Coordinator for Massachusetts Department of Transportation. I've been in that role for the last 2 years. Prior to that, I have been working in the MEPA department, which is the acronym for the National Environmental Policy Act and the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act, respectively. So I'm really versed in environmental regulations. In terms of educational background, I got my bachelor's degree in conservation biology and ecology at Boston University, and my master's degree in environmental engineering. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah,
Excellent. Sounds like a reasonable background for the commission, yeah. I would say.
Absolutely. Thanks.
That's wonderful. Well, really, thank you so much for volunteering to join us. We look forward to getting to know you. And like I said, I know that it's a little difficult meeting in the Zoom platform, but we'll look forward to getting to know you. And feel free to reach out by phone or email if you want to talk at any time in between meetings. Or Kelly is wonderful and is always available, well, during business hours for assistance or questions. So welcome aboard.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
And we do have one other member, Joyce Ulrich, who is not at the meeting this evening, but you will meet her, I'm sure, at an upcoming meeting. Okay, so at this time, I'm going to move into our regular agenda. Our agenda begins with public hearings, which are being heard under the State Wetlands Protection Act and the local Braintree Wetlands bylaw. For each hearing, I will first ask the applicant and a representative to present the project. Then conservation staff and commissioners may comment or ask questions. And finally, I will invite any members of the public to comment. Comments and questions should pertain to topics within the commission's jurisdiction and should be addressed to the chair. Following the discussion, the commission will determine whether to continue the hearing for additional information or to issue a decision. For example, a determination of applicability or an order of conditions, either allowing the work to proceed with conditions or denying the project. Decisions will still need to be signed by commissioners, so there is a time lag before issuance and delivery to applicants. And finally, for all participants, I'll ask you to please state your full name and address or your affiliation for the record when you speak. And so with that, I will just note that the first the first public hearing has been continued. That's a notice of intent for DP file 8-692 for 255 Plain Street. The applicant is the town of Braintree. This is, of course, the cemetery property, and they have requested a continuation to October 7th. We don't need to vote on that since their request came in before the agenda was published. So I'll just mention that they have continued a number of times. Kelly, do you have a sense for whether we may actually see them in October, or is there,
Yeah.
I don't want to get into the discussion on the project, but I'm just interested in an update after a long period of time.
Yes, I asked that exact question, and they're optimistic that they'll be able to present in October.
Okay, great. And if they can't, maybe it would be appropriate for them to just provide some sort of an update as to what their time frame is. I mean, it's not a huge problem to keep continuing them, but we don't want to do it forever. So hopefully they're moving along in a positive direction. All right, thanks for the update. Okay, so we're going to move on now to requests for determination of applicability. And just for folks who may not know, although determinations of applicability are not public hearings under the State Wetlands Protection Act, they actually are hearings under our local Braintree Wetlands bylaw. So I do ask for public comment, which I probably would regardless, but just a point of clarification for folks who may not know. So the first request for determination of applicability is for 92 Geraldine Lane. The applicant is White, and is somebody here to present that project?
I am David White. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, David. Thank you for being with us.
Sure, thanks for having me.
So I know I got an update from staff that you are having the wetlands delineated.
Correct.
I believe that's one piece of information that I think is important for the commission to know. There was a basic plan, but it just had the GIS wetlands. So you want to give us an update on that, please?
Sure. I had environmental firm out this week to delineate the wetlands. They've done their markings. The surveyor is coming back, I believe, on Saturday, this coming Saturday, to pick up the delineation. I'm seeking to put an in-ground pool in my backyard. I may stop my video here. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we can still hear you.
Okay.
And I don't know if you want to share a screen with the plan, or Kelly, if you wouldn't, if it's easy enough for you.
Well, at this point, I think we just hold off. I think this is more of an update tonight because
Okay.
there was an issue with the way the GIS wetlands were displaying. It's not displaying accurately, so that's
Got it. So we may as well just wait. Okay, sure, no problem. But yes, we can hear you, Mr. Perhaps I spoke too soon. I'm so sorry. So if you're trying to talk now, we actually can't hear you right now. So we'll give you a minute to hopefully reconnect.
Yeah, he seems frozen.
Yeah, it looks like the video has frozen. While we're waiting for David to hopefully rejoin us, obviously we're going to need to continue this item to the next agenda. So I don't see any reason why this couldn't potentially be at on our next meeting, which is October 7th, especially if the delineation is just been completed recently. Let's see. So we've lost David. I'm gonna just make one other comment, just that, you know, if he doesn't join us, maybe you could pass along Kelly, which is I had wanted to ask how they intended to handle. Oh, I see. Hold on. I'll wait.
My apologies. I'm going to shut my video off.
Okay, we can hear you again.
The video usually helps. My Zoom gets a little finicky. I thought it was just mostly during the day, so sorry about that. I think it's overused is the problem. That's what we do all day long. So no, I seeking to put an in-ground pool in my backyard. Delineation should be completed by the end of delineation was done yesterday, I guess. Days are running in, surveyor coming back to pick up those markings, and then from the initial plan that we had to potentially adjust based on what we would need to do to ensure that we have proper distance and setbacks from there. My backyard is already it's a backyard. It's grassed in. It's already disturbed. So just to give a context of that. And then I would seek to also do whatever landscaping would need to be done that would be in accordance with what the commission would see. So that's part of my discussions as well.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that project update and explanation. Do any commissioners have a question or comment at this stage? No? Okay. Kelly, anything?
No.
Okay. Well, I want to say thank you for considering plantings. That's great. You know, we do depending on the scope of work, sometimes look for some mitigation plantings to offset maybe an increase in impervious area, which a pool would be considered since there's no connection to groundwater. And, you know, and that would depend a bit on how close the pool ends up being to the wetlands, how much of it is within that 100-foot buffer zone, which is our regulatory area. The only other comment that I had is, if you had considered how you would be handling the pool water, that, you know, if you need to draw down the water, if there's like a backwash, the ideal situation is to not discharge that water within 100 feet of the wetlands. So I just wondered if you had considered how you might handle that.
It's a fair question. I don't know the answer to it. This is the first time that I've been down the road on a project like this. If that's a necessity, I think that would be fine. I think that's something that I would talk to the pool company about. And certainly, if that's needed, I understand the request or the need.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And again, that, you know, it's hard to say exactly what would be required without knowing where that buffer zone is, but you may very well have a place on your property where it's outside the buffer zone that you could discharge water.
Sure.
And, you know, there are other options too, but great. Thanks in advance for considering that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Are there any members of the public here that wish to comment on 92 Geraldine Lane? Okay. Then I will, and I'll just mention for Commissioner Pham's benefit and others that when we're doing the remote meetings, I've been generally offering up motions where normally I just, you know, accept a motion simply for clarity, so it's easier to tell who's talking. But of course, commissioners can always offer up your own motions as you see fit. So it's in no way to suggest that I need to do all of the motions, but that's typically how we've been doing it. And then I tend to turn to Mr. Hayward for the second, but I will do the roll call vote. So with that said, I will go ahead and make a motion to continue the hearing for 92 Geraldine Lane to our meeting on October 7th. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Hayward. Commissioner Francis.
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Williams
Aye.
and Commissioner Pham.
Yes.
Okay, great. It is unanimous, 5-0-0. We will see you in a month. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. And Kelly, I'll be in touch as we go through this over the course of the next couple of weeks or so.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, great.
thank you all. Have a good evening.
You're welcome. You as well.
Bye now.
Okay, so next we have a second request for determination of applicability, and this is for 83 Plain Street, and the applicant is Arnstein. And is somebody here for that project?
Yes, John Onstein.
Okay,
83.
great. Okay, so Mr. Arnstein, we have a memo from Kelly, and I understand that some the work has largely already happened. Can you give us? I'm still going to let you talk first, and just give us an update on what was done, and then I'll ask Kelly if she has anything further to add beyond the memo.
Okay. I had an area behind my pool, probably about 30 feet wide, that was pretty much just weeds and a lot of knotweed. And I just brought a machine in and pretty much turned the weeds over and flattened it out. And then I planted it with seed, and I put some crushed stone back there. And I didn't know that I had to, you know, file anything or anything like that, because I didn't have anything trucked in. You know, it was already there. I just pretty much moved it around myself.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Kelly, do you want to add, we have your staff memo. Do you want to add anything to that?
No, that's pretty much the summary. I mean,
Okay.
So I went out and, you know, based on the GIS wetlands, they're in the outer, this work was in the outer buffer zone, about 65 to 70 feet away. So given the scope, I think it can be approved without a formal plan.
Okay, and it's just buffer zone to BVW, the wetland, not
Right.
no other resource area. Okay. All right. Commissioners, questions or comments? Okay. Well, Mr. Arnstein, thank you for your explanation. You know, it does happen sometimes that people simply don't realize that either there are wetlands on their property, or, you know, maybe you realize that there are wetlands, but you don't realize that there's a regulated area around the wetlands. So, you know, I agree. It doesn't sound like there was a significant, you know, damage done. It's likely that had you come to us and asked for permission in advance, that you would have been granted the permission based on the pre-existing conditions and the distance to the wetlands. So just going forward, if there's any question about something that you'd like to do, Kelly is a great resource. You could always reach out, you know, for questions. A lot of times people may realize that, you know, they need a permit for some sort of a structure, but not necessarily for just basically disturbing the earth or moving vegetation. So that those are also triggers for our jurisdiction. I just had one clarifying question. So you said you moved some stone around, and what's the surface now? Is it a stone, or have you seed or stone on the edges? Just trying to figure out how it's been stabilized.
I seeded 90% of it. The other 10% I just made for like a little fire pit area with crushed stone.
Got it. Okay. As long as Kelly's satisfied that it's all stable, I don't have any other concerns. Are there any members of the public that want to comment on this project for 83 Plain Street? Okay, so there's no one here for that. So then what we could do is issue what's called a negative determination of applicability, which is a good thing from your standpoint. It means that you don't have to do any additional filing with us, and there's no conditions or, you know, additional requirements associated with it. And so, unless there's any other comments, I'll go ahead and make that motion to issue the negative determination of applicability for 83 Plain Street. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Hayward. Commissioner Francis?
May I interrupt?
Yes.
Yes, of course.
I did suggest just that one condition, that any future work be within the buffer zone, you know, needs review and approval, just as a reminder.
Oh, yes, I'm so sorry. I think I'm used to seeing your conditions numbered, and I
Yeah.
read that, but then I glossed over it when I made the motion. My apologies. So exactly, so the condition be any additional work in the 100-foot buffer zone requires review and approval by the Conservation Commission. So let me just ask you, Mr. Arnstein, do you have any questions about that condition and what that means at this time?
I do have one question.
Sure.
As she saw, I have a lot of knotweed, the Japanese knotweed back there.
Uh-oh.
It's actually encroaching, like it's already come back through where I seeded. You know what I'm saying? It's slowly but surely creeping up my driveway, and at some point it's gonna hit my house. And once it hits my foundation is gonna be junk.
Yeah, knotweed is a very, very aggressive invasive plant. Is your question about controlling it in some way?
Controlling it. I
Sure.
put it
So,
to try to kill it out, and then like try to dig out the roots. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
literally 3/4 of the way up my driveway now, and I have a pool that's 40 feet long, so it's probably traveled 100 feet.
well, I can let Kelly give, you know, some more insight on the scope of what's there, but it sounds like it's a really large stand that may be tough to eradicate. Is that right, Kelly?
Yes, it is quite a bit.
Does it go all the way to the wetland? Were you able to determine that?
It goes to the edge of the wetland.
Yeah, it's really tough. So, you know, when it comes to invasive plants like this, you know, sometimes the goal can be eradicating the plant completely. It gets really difficult when you have just such a large mature stand, and when you get close to the wetland, it gets a little challenging too, because it's hard to completely eliminate it without the use of herbicides. And then as you get really close to the wetland, the commission tends to get a little nervous about, you know, or at least wants to be very cautious about allowing herbicide use. It doesn't mean it's never allowed, but, you know, certainly keeping that knotweed from spreading is something that I think would make a lot of sense. And that's often kind of the next thing that people, okay, well, maybe it's unrealistic to get rid of it, and probably it's on your neighbor's property. So even if you totally eradicated it on your property, it's going to creep back in.
Right.
But, you know, anywhere where you have existing lawn, where you see it popping up, you can mow it, you know, regularly, and that will stop it from spreading. If you want to, you know, pull up smaller plants, I don't think that's a problem. If you get into like a significant amount of earth disturbance and you're going further back towards the wetland, that's something that, you know, depending, I guess you kind of need to think about how much effort you want to put in, because if it gets too significant, then you might need to do another one of these types of filings with us sort of for some formal approval, in part because we just want to make sure that, for example, you're not disturbing such a large area that there's a potential for any erosion into the wetland. And also, then if it's a big area, you might need to replant something to help kind of beat that knotweed back. I don't know if that's helpful at this stage, but that's just some quick input.
Right. All right, well, I'll talk to Kelly later on.
Yeah, so think about it. We're happy to work with you, but I think that's probably about all I can say now without getting too far afield from the current application. But I appreciate that you're concerned about it and thinking about it.
Okay. Thank you.
I would suggest just trying to stop it from creeping up by mowing or whatever. But we've seen people, and I've been part of a project where we try to dig it out, and it is almost impossible to get rid of knotweed without like years of herbicide treatment. It's so aggressive that it's just almost beyond control.
So I completely agree, Kelly. I thought of two other quick things I just want to mention in case you decide to do some cutting and such. Certain times of year can be really helpful for cutting it. So for example, before, I don't know if right now is the right time or a little bit later, but basically, before it starts sending down a lot of stores into the roots, if you cut it, you can sort of help it a little bit more to go away. And you can do repeated cuttings over a growing season, and that can really help. But the other thing to be really careful about is anything that you cut, you really want to take off of the property because it can grow vegetatively, which means the cut plant parts, it can actually sprout from those sometimes, which is probably why it's so successful.
That's why I don't like mowing it.
Yeah, mowing, it's true. Mowing, you almost need to like rake and bag up the clippings afterwards. It's a good point. All right, well, I hope we haven't discouraged you too much, but it's good to know what you're dealing with at least. So think about what you might want to do. Kelly can provide some guidance, let you know if you need to come back to us for permission.
Okay.
All right. So at this point, I will go ahead and make a motion to issue the negative determination of applicability with one condition for 83 Plain Street. Is there a second?
Second.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Hayward. Any further discussion? Okay, Commissioner Francis?
Aye.
Commissioner Pham? You are muted. We see him moving. Great, thank you. And Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
Okay, it is unanimous 5-0-0, and I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Hayward. Commissioner Francis?
Aye.
Commissioner Pham?
Yes.
And Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
Okay, again, unanimous 5-0-0. And that concludes, thank you very much. That concludes our determinations of applicability. So we're going to move on to notices of intent. The first one is DEP file number 8-695. The address is 42 Hayward Street. The applicant is the Luz, and this is continued from our August 5th meeting. I will note for the record that I did listen to the recording for this agenda item so that I only missed one meeting, so I can still participate in the discussion. Unfortunately, Commissioner Pham, because you were not yet on the commission when this was opened, you're not able to vote on the project. But if you have a comment that you'd like to make, essentially as a member of the public, certainly you're welcome to do so. Okay, so let's see. I see that Mr. Hardy is here. Are you filling in for Mr. Mann tonight?
I am. He is on a well-deserved vacation with his family, so I'm
Good for him.
yeah.
All right, well, welcome. Can you please give us an update then?
Yes, I believe I can share screen here.
Oh, and I said your name, but if you could just introduce yourself for the record. Thanks.
Sean Hardy with Hardy and Mann Design Group. Trying to see why it doesn't give me the option to share my plan.
I can share on my screen if it's.
I see the window that I have open, but there it goes. I got it. Okay. So can you see that? Yeah, hopefully.
Yes, it just opened up.
So I believe last time, and again, correct me, I was Actually, I was on the call for the planning, but not for you guys. But it's my understanding that it was requested to remove all of the fill outside of the 25-foot buffer zone. And that's what's represented on this plan. So we have the fill that had occurred came down in this area. We're now pulling it back to the 25-foot and coming up with a 3-to-1 slope. And to meet that 25-foot requirement, we have also added the wording that the driveway is supposed to be done with turf stone porous paver system. That the word porous was, they wanted that to be on the plan through the planning board, just to make sure what it was we were doing. But I think Mr. Mann went over that with you guys pretty much in depth at the last meeting, so you know what we're dealing with. The other thing that we added to the plan through the planning board, and I guess there's a little bit of discussion that is probably going to be had. We understood them to see what we could do to eliminate some more of the roof runoff for some of the downstream neighbors. And we are proposing a couple of rain barrels. The owner wanted to be able to do that, to reuse some of that for irrigation for some of the plantings on the property. I do know that we got draft conditions, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I want to just address, there was a condition in there, number 31, that the wording was to direct all roof runoff to infiltration chambers. Again, that's not what we heard, at least, or understood coming out of planning. I understand that you guys can condition whatever you want to condition, but I would like to point out that, this existing house, it's pretty irregularly shaped. There's existing deck in the back, decks over here, existing driveway. To send all roof runoff to infiltration is going to be some significant work. It's going to have to happen under existing decks to pipe things there, possibly break up the existing driveway to run those. So we're hoping for some leeway or a little bit of a discussion on what that condition might end up looking like. Like the feeling that we have between the porous pavement and the gravel, that's the gravel layer that's below it, serves as an area where runoff can go and gets infiltrated. That's really the only, I guess, hang up that we have. It's just to have the word all roof runoff go to infiltration is going to be a significant impact to this homeowner and to the existing residents, and it's going to be a lot more work than what's shown on this plan. So we're hoping for some flexibility there.
Thanks, Mr. Hardy, for the update and showing us the revised plan. So I will just open it to the commission for questions or comments.
I'll chime in, start, Ms. Chair.
Great,
Thank
thanks.
you for pulling that material out of the 25-foot buffer zone. That was, that was something we're concerned about. And I kind of do agree with you, Mr. Hardy, that this is an existing house, right? This has been there, and to ask now to run all the roof runoff into dry wells, yeah, I get that. I understand that's a lot of work, especially where you've got you're putting in this porous driveway, and I think some rain barrels, and if you could throw even another rain barrel somewhere else. That water, especially in a drier summer, unlike this one, comes in very handy. So something like that, I don't know, I'd feel pretty comfortable with that, especially with the work that you've done for stormwater mitigation already on site. Proposed, I should say.
Thanks, Commissioner Hayward. Other comments, questions?
May I ask? I don't know it off the top of my head, but what's the change in impervious area outside the roof line, between pre and post?
Well, we list on the zoning table that, there is an increase. But that increase comes from the fact that it's a proposed deck extension, which I don't think qualifies necessarily as impervious. And then the proposed patio, it's pavers. So, zoning wise or lot coverage wise, it counts as impervious area that's being increased. But, practically a deck with wood, with the gaps between it, that's water's getting under it. The patio, it's similar. It's got the, base of sand. So I don't know necessarily whether that counts as an increase for stormwater purposes. But the flip side is, which we, don't necessarily get credit for, the turf stone driveway that is now gravel is going to be constructed, with the turf stone, with the grass, the crushed stone under it, for the rock, drainage course. So it's kind of like conservatively, we're showing that it's going up, but not getting credit for turf stone, and we're getting penalized by calling a deck as impervious and a patio as impervious. So it's hard to.
Okay, maybe I missed this, but now you have a stone swale on the opposite side, the right side of the house. Is that new?
Down here?
No, up on the right side or east side of the house? I don't know.
Next to the existing deck, to the right of the existing deck, there's like a note.
Proposed 1 foot wide trench or stone swale and pipe.
Yeah, I think that's just to
Okay.
just to like collect some of that runoff and have that be in the ground as well. Around that. It's like a drain type thing.
I mean, could you consider going up to that proposed patio and just put a little stone swale around that some? Or a little,
Yeah, you mean
rain
so
garden,
instead of,
rain garden or something that would catch the runoff and infiltrate it?
instead of stopping here, run that up further to the end up there?
Or yeah.
I think that would be reasonable.
You can make it even make a little, rain garden, so it looks nice and it's not just a nuisance. I mean, what would the commission members think of that instead of doing the infiltration?
I agree
That
with that.
sounds reasonable.
Yeah, I don't, as nice as it would be to have all of the rooftop runoff infiltrated, I would not require that for an existing house. That's not, the house is not what's changing. The rain, I think the rain barriers are great, but yeah, the deck should be okay. Was there some, can some gravel be put under the deck? Maybe a few inches of gravel to help infiltrate the water that runs through the deck?
Yeah, I think that could be accommodated, stripped.
Just in case the soils are kind of compacted in any way there.
Yeah.
The water, then there's no chance of runoff erosion, and then that gets infiltrated. And then what Peter suggested sounds good for the patio. It sounds like if a paver is proposed for the patio, depends on what type of paver, but you may just need a permeable subbase for that to be permeable. Though I hear the word rain garden or some feature like that, I get pretty excited. So,
Well, I was thinking it,
but I don't know. I don't know if then you have to change the proposed grading or to make that work. I'm not sure. I'll let the engineers, you guys discuss what you think would work best, but I'm in favor of either option.
Yeah, so that was one of my questions is what is the surface area? What is the surface condition actually underneath the patio? So if it's actually something that's impervious right now, it would just run off. So if you can provide some type of like gravel, like had I said, and also to Peter's point, if rather than doing a trench stone swell, you should look into maybe a vegetative swell, so it won't be as hard of a landscaping surface.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure, Kelly.
just because I don't want to conflict with the planning board, Melissa was pretty certain that that was the intention. What if we change the condition to say unless otherwise, unless otherwise allowed by the planning board, all roof front, like just leave it up to them. If that's really the intention, they can sort it out or change it or whatever.
Honestly, I would rather not have it in our permit. I mean, that doesn't mean that the planning board can't require it, but to me, it feels excessive to require it. I wouldn't ordinarily require it for this type of a project, so I want to be consistent. You know, if they want to require it, it's not like we would say, no, don't put dry wells in. It just means that, you know, depending where they go, I suppose it might need to come back for a field change from us. I mean, is it problematic if it's not in there?
No, it's not. I just don't want to, you know, sort of change the design and if that's really their intention and that's what they're, I don't want to get in the middle of that. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
I do. Yeah, you don't want to end up with what we're asking conflicting with what the planning board is asking.
Right.
Yes, that makes sense. So I think if we just look for mitigation for runoff in the deck and the patio area, then we should be, I think we should be okay, because that seems separate from what the planning board is requesting. And they may, you know, I'm not suggesting that they're not justified in asking for that. I just want to be, I'm trying to be mindful of being consistent with our decisions.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. And I would, you know, I accept that. Well, not that I haven't, but I agree with that is the term that I'm going to use. And we are prepared. I mean, whether it involves taking a series of photos or whatever to present before the planning board, it's a real hardship to make that be a condition for this project, given the existing house and I mean, you can just see from this plan view, the irregular shape, there's a lot of points that there's roof runoff coming down around this house, and to get it piped around to infiltration is not going to be an easy task.
So Mr. Hardy, let me ask you this. Would you prefer to leave this hearing open for another meeting with us so that you can sort that out and then maybe show, you know, the gravel under the deck or the patio, or if you extend that swale, you could finalize those designs a little bit?
No, I mean, I think I hear from you. I think we're going to extend that 1 foot trench up to the end of the patio, and we're going to modify the detail that patio has some stone under it. And honestly, if acceptable to you guys, I'd prefer close it so that we at least have some closure for the applicant and go in. I think Kelly's suggestion was pretty good to not pit two boards against each other. Worst case, they make us do more. And I don't think you guys are going to be mad at us if we are forced to do additional infiltration. So I'm hopeful that you would consider closing it.
Okay, so why don't I take a minute then to see if any members of the public want to comment, and then we'll kind of come back to the commission and see how we're going to proceed. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment on 42 Hayward Street? Okay, so there's no one has spoken up. So then I'll just come back to the commission and Kelly. Does anyone, Peter, I see your hand. Yes.
Yes. Do we know the purpose of that proposed 1 foot wide trench with stone swale?
Mr. Hardy, can you explain it a little bit further?
I think it's just to intercept rain before it heads down that hill. You know, there's some topography heading towards the house. It's trying to intercept that and get it into the ground.
So from running down from the hill behind the house, you mean towards the house?
Yeah.
So it's actually not for it's not mitigating for any impervious surface. It's mitigating for overland.
Right. It's
flow,
got,
essentially.
yeah, this, you know, you got 68 down to 60 in a relatively short span. So the potential for sheeting water there to intercept it and get it into the ground.
Yeah. So I think extending the swale may give it a better chance to infiltrate all the water coming down there. So you could, you know, extend it up that proposed deck extension and proposed patio and ensure that you have long-term infiltration of that water coming down.
Yeah, I like the idea. So it's whatever that 56 or 57 feet there along that back leg of the patio. I like that. We take that suggestion and we're happy to do it.
Thank you. Are you amenable to adding some plantings? I know that was another suggestion in that along that, excuse me, instead of a stone swale, more of a vegetated swale. Is that something you'd be open to, or the applicant would be open to?
I don't know. I mean, I know they plan on doing plantings. I don't know necessarily where, but particularly they were more than happy with the rain barrels to be able to water some stuff around there. It's just, I don't know, committing to like a rain garden or something like
Sure.
that needs maintenance. It might be a little more than what they're thinking.
I understand. I mean, I think it would be nice, but I also recognize that you're talking about mitigation that's not necessarily for the structure that's going up. So yes, Hung, I see your hand up.
So the idea of the vegetated swale wasn't like, well, for planting like a tree or a garden and stuff such. It's basically a generic term for a grass swale. That's not hard surface like a stone swale. So it's just something to soften up the landscape for your client. That's about it.
I mean, that the grass swale could have the pipe underneath it. You know, instead of
It's an under drain,
goes out
yes.
along the patio, you can just have basically a French drain with a grass cover.
Yeah, I guess my only thing is that we're not showing like proposed grades. The intent of this was to match the existing and have the pipe in it to have that, like the perforated pipe and just get around there. I don't know that. if you're
Yes,
saying a
yes,
grass
that's what I'm
swale-
thinking of.
So if you're saying a grass swale, is that just the same thing, grass at the surface, not changing grades, to pitch it in
Yeah,
direction
yeah.
with the pipe under it instead of
Yeah.
having it be stone? That would be fine. Yeah.
Swale.
Hung, is that what you were suggesting? Because I asked simply because when I hear grass swale, I think of it more of like a depressed area. Yes.
Yes, that's
okay.
correct. It's a depressed area where it's versus a stone swell, which is a hard surface swell. In my opinion, it was. Well, once again, it's a suggestion from the public to soften up the landscape versus another stone swell that goes up another 56 feet.
So I guess there's maybe one other thing to point out about this, which is that I actually really like the suggestion. I understand, Mr. Hardy, why you have a little reluctance, but really, as I'm looking at the plans, where it's proposed right now is technically outside of commission jurisdiction. That gray dash line is the 100-foot buffer, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Correct.
Yes. So personally, I don't feel comfortable requiring it to be vegetated unless, the applicant was on board with it, simply because of the jurisdictional nature of it. And again, if it was taking runoff that was within our jurisdiction, it would be a different story. But where it's really not. So I would suggest if there's not a willingness to just change it, to just leave it as is. Does that sound all right to commissioners? Okay.
You're saying that we have no sort of additional trench along the side of the patio?
Yeah, so good point. So where it was proposed to be extended does come into commission jurisdiction.
Right.
Yes, correct.
So we go with that. I mean, the applicant seems to be offering that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the stone swell along there.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. I think I think that's a good idea.
It may help with his argument with the planning board too.
Yeah, I agree. It's helpful. We're willing to do it.
And it's great, it's pitching that way as well. So why don't I have a couple of draft conditions that we could add in mind.
Mhm.
Why don't I throw those out there now? So stormwater management will eliminate condition 31 or replace it rather, and say, first of all, that the proposed stone swale shall be extended. Actually, before it is north.
You're muted, Heather.
Oh, sorry. I'm not sure who's sharing the plan, but is it possible to share the plan again so that we can look at it
Yep.
while we're doing this thing? That's right. I couldn't remember, Kelly, if you did, or if it was you, Sean. Thank you. You're not off the hook yet.
I was trying to escape.
I can't escape. Thank you. I need a visual reference. Okay, so the condition would be that, so north is up on this plan, correct? That's my, yes, okay, that's my sense of
Yes.
the geography of the area. I just want to make certain. Okay, so the proposed stone swale shall be extended to the north along the eastern side of the proposed deck extension and proposed patio. And then we'll say another condition that a minimum of 3 inches of crushed stone shall be added at grade below the proposed deck to infiltrate runoff. And then the final condition would be that the proposed patio shall be constructed to be permeable with permeable joints and a permeable subbase.
Good job.
Does that sound good? Do
Yes.
commissioners want to have like the details of the patio submitted for approval before construction? I don't know, if Kelly, if that would be fine with you,
I feel
or
like
maybe, or just
the
documentation
patio was
following
already
construction.
proposed to be pervious. Wasn't that already in the plans? There was a detail for that.
Yeah, I'm trying to look and see what.
Stop there, show me.
Proposed porous pavement section. So is that, yeah, I think that is it. So 6-inch filter
Oh,
core,
there it is. Okay,
paver stone. Yes.
excellent. Okay, I think that sounds good. While I'm on a roll here with conditions, I'm actually going to suggest one more. So at one of the, it must have been 2 hearings ago, I had made a comment about the plantings that were being proposed, and it was the bearberry and the Scotch heather. And I was thinking that it would be good to have some additional native woody plants in there. No trees are coming out for the project, so I was just thinking shrubs. Given the area, the total area, I feel like it would be appropriate to have maybe a couple of different species for diversity. And I remembered she didn't have an objection to that, but I think it may perhaps just got lost in the shuffle. So if that would be amenable to the applicant, then I would add a condition that be revised prior to construction. Does that sound reasonable?
It does. I guess I'm asking for a little guidance on number and type. If you
Sure.
have that.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we have it as a pre-construction condition? So it would be, let's see, it could even be 122. Let's see. Maybe, so there's a couple of other prior to starting any work. So maybe there's after 22, draft condition number 22, prior to starting any work, the applicant owner shall submit a revised planting plan incorporating, additionally incorporating at least 2 different native shrub species or native shrubs species, and then our standard language about, no invasives. Plants must, I forget the exact language that we use. Plants must be native, no cultivars. Invasive species or non-natives shall be allowed for review and approval by the commission, and period. But by the commission, I mean that the plan can be submitted to Kelly to approve on the commission's behalf. And then you can reach out to Kelly in advance for some guidance on exact species and number. I mean, the number is basically going to be, fit some in, with what's proposed, or take a few of those away and, have some on 5 or 10 feet on center, depending what it is. It's been too long since I've been out there. I can't remember what shrubs are already existing in the area, but that can sometimes be a good guide. But, something that can handle slightly drier conditions because it'll be on the slope.
Okay.
I think that there's a lot of good, like, berry producing options. I think that would work. I don't want to set anything specific because, the homeowner might have a preference for like a red berry or a yellow flower with a witch hazel or something, a red twig dogwood or a high bush blueberry. I mean, I think anything like that is the kind of thing I'm thinking of.
I get that. I'm just wondering, I mean, we're proposing 42 now, so I didn't know if you had, like, are you looking for another 20, or are you looking for, fit them kind of in, or You know,
I was kind of thinking to, and maybe I should amend the condition to say this. I was thinking to substitute some of the proposed plantings
Oh,
for
okay.
shrubs instead. And let's
Okay.
see, so 42 are proposed. Yeah, so maybe instead have half of them be woody shrubs. So the condition could say a
that is
minimum
good
of
guidance.
20 shrubs of at least 2 different species.
Okay, thank
So
you.
a
It's
little
good
different.
guidance.
No, I'm glad that you asked. Good to sort this out in advance. Does that sound okay to the commission?
Yes.
All right. And then the final comment that I had is I was thinking back about this outlet that's been buried that was there prior to the project, the initiation of any work on site. And I know that the intention is to uncover that and restore it. I'm slightly nervous about it just because I know that that was a perpetual condition in an old order of conditions for the property, that be maintained. And once we issue this notice of this order of conditions, excuse me, the onus is then on the property owner to do the work. There's no sort of obligation to do it. So I just want to make sure that that actually happens and happens soon. I observed some changes on site already with water clearly collecting and building up on the southeastern side of that driveway. I just want to make sure it doesn't, change the hydrology in the area in a negative way. We could add a condition that work be done within a certain period of time, a few months or something like that, maybe before we go through another winter is kind of what I was thinking. Does anybody have any input or thoughts on that? So then, Mr. Hardy, does that sound reasonable to you from your understanding of the intention for the time frame moving forward? My sense is that they wanted to move forward pretty quickly since some work has already happened.
Hey, yeah, it's hard to say we're going to hold off when they already started. So yeah, they're looking
Yeah.
to go.
So then I would suggest that we have a condition. Let's see where it's appropriate to fit it in. I don't know that it really matters. Maybe at the beginning, before the special, at the end of the special conditions general, just that the work associated with the existing drainage pipe and outlet shall be completed, and the outlet uncovered and stabilized within 90 days of issuance of the order of conditions. How does that sound? Kelly, are you okay with that as well?
I am, yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure it doesn't get forgotten. Or, God forbid they decide to not move forward or something like that. All right.
Yeah, it's reasonable.
Great. Well, thanks everyone for bearing with me on all those tweaks along the way. That was a very good discussion though, I thought. All right. So is there anything further before I make a motion? Okay, then I'll go ahead and make a motion to issue an order of conditions for DEP file number 8-695 with conditions as discussed and as drafted and as discussed and revised during the meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Hayward. Commissioner Francis. Diane, I can't hear you yet.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Pham, you cannot vote on this, so I'll go to Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Okay, so our vote is 4-0-1, being 4 in favor, none opposed, and 1 abstaining. And now I will make a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Hayward. Commissioner Francis? You are muted.
Aye.
Okay, and Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
Okay, and that is 4-0-1 with Commissioner Pham abstaining again. All right, you are all set. Thank you, Sean. Nice to see you.
Thank you. This was helpful. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you. All right, so we will now move on to our next notice of intent. Kelly, has there been a DEP file number issued yet?
No, there was not.
Okay, so regardless of how the discussion goes, we will not be able to vote on this project tonight because we are not allowed to do so until a DEP file number is issued, but we can still hold the continued public hearing. So this is for 66 Armstrong Circle, and Lynch is the applicant. And I believe I see the engineering firm here. Is someone here to present this project?
Hi, yes, Gigi Mundham's here representing the owner, Paula Lynch.
Great, welcome, thank you. Can you give us an update, please?
Yes, we had our meeting, our first meeting, and in that meeting, we were told that the commission is not and will not be in favor of any of the proposed work within the 25-foot zone, even though it was just like flattening like 2 feet and grassing the area that already has small retaining walls, etc. So we made just some changes to the grading to keep everything out of the 25-foot zone. And we also provided through the wetland scientist a planting plan for to replace some of the previous grass or non-native species to replace them with native species, also provided for the with the amended plans. We do not have a DEP number because our check got lost, so they couldn't issue us one, but we'll send one tomorrow and we'll, I assume let them see that and the next one. Bye, sorry.
No problem, it has happened to me as well. Okay, thank you for the update and thanks for the explanation on the DEP number. That sounds like something that can certainly be resolved. Do you want to share your screen and show us a revised plan, or if not, Kelly can do that? And while you're bringing that up, I forgot to mention at the beginning that I did also miss the first hearing in this, but similar to the last one, I listened to the audio, and so I can participate because I only missed one hearing. And unfortunately, Commissioner Pham, same thing as the last one, you will not be eligible to vote, but we welcome your comments as a member of the public on this if you want to comment. Okay, great, thank you. We can see the plan.
This is the existing conditions. This is how the site looks as is right now. So this is the wetland flags, and then this is the 25-foot zone. This is the 100-foot zone. This property is entirely in the riverfront area, and it also has a flood zone, which is the elevation 106. In our proposed conditions, we just moved the 106 contour to the edge of the new wall here. When I say new, it's partially new. This wall is already here. The owner just wants to extend it so she can have like a flat flat area when she walks out of her house. Shown here 106, this is just a 2 feet wall, and we're just extending the 106 grade right to the bottom of it, which it actually gives more flood storage. And for construction, the owner also proposing a small addition on the side of the house and just like replacing the impervious area that was from the covered patio, the concrete walk, with a new patio area. It's not like one-to-one, but it's close numbers. And here, if you look at this station 0 and station 33, this 33 feet stretch where the grading changes are proposed, the dashed line is existing and the solid line is proposed. So there's only a small drop in grade at the bottom of the wall, and that's all the grade change.
Okay, great, thank you very much. Okay, I'll just turn it to the commission for any questions or comments.
I'll just chime in and say thank you for hearing us last month with being concerned about working within the 25-foot buffer and pulling that work out. I'm pretty excited that you're doing that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Hayward. Anyone else? So I agree. I think it's a positive that the work is taken out of the area. And I'll also note that given that this is riverfront area, I know the comment was made that the riverfront area standards were not addressed. I guess I'll ask before I make the comment, was anything submitted addressing those standards in any way in writing or with any specific revisions?
Yes, so after the fact, Andrew Point of DEP actually did ask us to address the 1 to 2 mitigation requirement, and we have sent him this letter today along with to Ms. Phelan that the proposed, let me stop sharing for a second and so I can find the sorry, the planting plan that we submitted.
Thanks. While you're bringing that up, I'll make the comment that I know you mentioned that, you know, there was already some alteration in that 25-foot buffer, but not only is the plantings that are being proposed helpful from a standpoint of our buffer zone and that trying to maintain that no disturb, but it's also helpful in terms of meeting the riverfront area standards, which require an improvement and preserving or extending vegetation within that inner 100-foot inner riparian zone to the extent feasible. And so I think that really helps achieve that as well.
So this is the planting schedule provided by Ken Thompson, botanist and wetland scientist. And the required 2-to-1 ratio based on the impervious area increase would be, the required minimum mitigation area would be 796 over here. And what's proposed in the planting plan is 1,700 square feet.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, it'll be helpful to have that documentation. Thank you for addressing. I didn't realize that DEP had commented. That's helpful, and the response is really helpful. I had one relatively small comment on the planting plan. I think the plants that are proposed look great. Nice native plants. I noticed that it mentions mulching with natural wood chips, which of course is appropriate around individual plants, but I'd like to see the plan note that there'd be seeding outside of that. So essentially, I want to make sure that it doesn't become a planted mulch bed, which is not as beneficial and doesn't quite fit as well with the condition to keep it natural going forward. So I think it would be good if there was just a little note indicating that the mulch is just around individual plants to help them establish and stay moist enough while they're growing, and then that the remaining area would be seeded with a wildlife conservation type seed mix.
Okay, yeah, I'll let him know to update it.
Okay, great. Yeah, it should be a simple change. We could condition that as well, but if it's on the plan, it's even better than this. It doesn't get missed. Kelly, did you have a question about the plants? I thought you had a question about potentially about.
Yeah, I was just thought it was unusual to have the low bush blueberry next to the wetland because I see them at the, you know, summit of Blue Hills where it's very dry. So it's, I did ask Ken that, and he said, you know, there's a little shelf of upland there. If he's comfortable with it, I don't have a major concern. I was just curious.
Okay, yeah, I was curious too, so that's helpful to know. All right, I was curious if anything was proposed to mitigate the runoff from the addition, the rooftop runoff.
There is nothing proposed because it does not trigger a review as far as stormwater runoff.
So do you know if gutters to downspouts are being proposed, or if it would be more of a drip edge?
Downspouts are not proposed.
Okay, so I agree, you're right, it's not subject to the stormwater standards. And given the size of the addition, it's sort of like borderline where you know, sometimes we ask when you start getting to around this size or maybe a little smaller, simply because it's still beneficial to the resource. It's still beneficial to the resource area to infiltrate. So I guess I would just ask if the, consideration maybe of a little stone infiltration trench around the foundation, if they're doing a drip edge anyways, that kind of helps to avoid the water pooling around the foundation, which tends to be a positive from a building standpoint. So maybe that would be something to just consider between now and the next meeting. And similarly, I saw that pavers are proposed, and I wondered if those were permeable pavers.
They are not permeable pavers. We have talked about, with the owner as well. She just didn't know how she would take care of it. And my professional opinion is, unless used in like a commercial setting, they just work for one summer, and then after the winter they just get clogged. But if I can bring it up to her, and or we can put something on the edge, maybe like a maybe almost like a diaphragm kind of.
Sure, yeah, if you wouldn't mind seeing if that would be feasible. It certainly would be beneficial. And I guess I can't speak to their longevity over time. I've heard that it depends a bit on what actual products are used. So, I get the concern somebody wants to have something that's gonna last. But that's great if it can be, considered. All right, anything else from the commission? Are there any members of the public that want to comment on this 66 Armstrong Circle? All right. And Kelly, did you have anything else?
No, we're not ready to issue conditions because we don't have the file number, but I did in the conditions say that the increase in impervious area shall be mitigated by the use of pervious pavers, just because we've required it on other projects and we see it proposed a lot lately, so it didn't seem like anything unusual.
Thank you for pointing that out. I read these, but obviously that had not stuck in my brain as we're sitting here right now. So then I guess, we have a little time before the next hearing. So, that I think that would give time to talk, for you to talk to the applicant about it. I'm speaking to the representative now to talk to your client about it. And, if it's a real concern, to see if you could propose some other mitigation as you suggested around the edges. I think that there are sturdier options that don't, break down as easily, but still can be installed in an impermeable fashion. But, that level of detail will let you and the applicant sort out. Unless the commissioner has a different opinion, chime in. Okay. Yeah, I see no reason to do one or the other in this case. All right. So look for a few potential revisions, and then assuming that DEP number comes in, I see no reason why we couldn't vote to approve it the next time, and Kelly could just update conditions if needed.
Thank you.
All right, anything else before I make a motion? All right, then I will make a motion to continue the notice of intent for 66 Armstrong Circle. DEP file number is pending to our next meeting on October 7th. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Commissioner Hayward, Commissioner Francis,
Aye.
and Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Okay, and Commissioner Pham is abstaining again, so that is 4-0-1. We will see you next month. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right, you too. All right, so we will now move into our last notice of intent. The DEP file number is, I believe, also pending still on this one. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and this is for 4 and 44 Allen Street. The applicant is Arch Communities LLC. And I see that some representatives are here, so you can introduce yourself for the record and proceed when you're ready. And in this case, I would definitely encourage you to share your screen if you have the ability, so you can look at the plans.
Absolutely. Good evening. My name is Devin Batchelder. I'm a wetland scientist with Weston and Sampson. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent.
Good.
All right.
Okay.
Let me see if I can get my screen shared with you folks. All right.
I think that Chairperson Lees, can you hear me? It's Frank Marinelli.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Marinelli. I can hear you.
How are you?
We're doing
Just
well.
briefly before we hear from Weston Sampson, I represent Wynn Properties, and that's great that we have the exhibits up. And obviously we want to devote this to the resource area and the project, but just a couple of points on the project. The developers are Wynn Development and Art. Yep. Can you hear me?
You're muted.
I'm sorry, I muted myself. I'm so sorry. I was just going to ask, before you continue, could you just explain for people who might not know the connection between the applicant and Wynn Properties? That might not be obvious.
Yes, the applicant is Wynn Properties and Arch Communities. They're co-developers. And they were designated earlier this year in the town's RFP process as redeveloper of the former Braintree Electric or Beld site on Allen Street, 4 Allen Street and 44 Allen Street. Under the Wynn proposal, which is what we'll refer to the developer as Wynn, the site will be transformed from a former Beld industrial use into 56 beautifully designed and landscaped residences known as Switch House Lofts. And Switch House Lofts does represent a tremendous opportunity for Braintree. We're before the planning board now for the issuance of the requested special permits. One is, of course, the floodplain special permit, which Weston Sampson will address in addition to the other resource area issues cited by Kelly in the staff report. But just by way of background, Wynn is one of the nation's premier housing developers. They're currently 5th largest in the nation with 105,000 housing units under management. In Massachusetts, they are the largest residential management company with over 17,500 units under management. So with the designation of Wynn by the town, Braintree certainly has one of the nation's premier residential developers transforming this blighted site. And I'll just briefly, before turning it over to Weston Sampson, recognize we usually have Adam Stein, who's the Senior Vice President of Development for Wynn, Tim Muscatato, who's the Director of Acquisitions, and Rich Relic, who is the co-developer of Arch Communities. Wynn has acquired and developed over $2.5 billion in holdings in 10 different states. And of significance, they've completed over 3 dozen historically significant adaptive reuse projects, such as we're proposing with a portion of this site, which is the Switch House. And so the site is about 1.6 acres. As the commission knows, it was the site of the Beld operations, and at one time shown in a 1941 photograph, there was a towering brick stack and industrial buildings. The buildings on the site will be removed except for the Switch House, which is the easterly-most building, about 100 feet from Quincy Avenue. And a second story will be added to that building. And so there'll be 8 residences, much needed housing, 8 residences on the first floor and 8 residences on the second floor of the Switch House building. And then the site, as you know, drops considerably as you head towards the river and the tidal basin. And we have underneath the Switch House building, we have some public areas for the residents, which might be a gym and some gathering areas. We also have 39 covered spaces and 21 surface spaces, which all comply with zoning. So there's 60 parking spaces for 56 residences. So I covered 16 residences in the renovated Switch House building. To the west of that, heading westerly on Allen Street towards the Shaw Street area. At the front of that lot, we will have another 4-story building, and that building has an east and a west section connected by a glass bridge, and that will be 17 units in one of the buildings and 23 in the other, for a total of 40. So that's the layout of the 56. Most importantly, from the perspective of development, we have a series of trails, as you know, over at Watson Park, which I'm very familiar with. My son plays a lot of baseball over there. And we have the Dingy pathway, and we have the Frank Tolan pathway. And so we're on this site, Wind Properties is proposing a Riverwalk amenity, which is open to the public, and it will extend from Allen Street over 600 linear feet down to the riverfront and to a river overlook deck, which is shown in all of the filed plans. And I'm sure that Weston Sampson will talk about it, but with the transformation from a vacant industrial site to 56 aesthetic residences, much needed, open space at the site will double to approximately 44%. And there'll be hundreds of new plantings on the site. And of course, for the first time after decades of municipal ownership, the vacant site will now produce significant real estate tax revenue for the town, much needed housing, construction jobs, and other substantial economic benefits, which will support the revitalized landing area and the town. So thank you for the opportunity to give those introductory remarks, Chairperson Lees.
Great, thank you, Mr. Marinelli. That context is really helpful, and certainly am aware that the site has been vacant for a long time, so it's exciting to see some redevelopment being proposed. So then maybe we'll go back to the engineer, and you can proceed.
Yes, excellent. Thank you so much. So as a reminder, my name is Devin. I'm a wetland scientist with Weston and Sampson. Also on the call, we have Jesse Johnson, who's an engineer with Weston and Sampson, should engineering questions arise for you folks. If you don't mind, I will start with a little bit of background, which we've already been introduced to a bit, but we'll just kind of reiterate. So the proposed project is located at 4 and 44 Allen Street in Braintree. The project was formerly the site of the Braintree Electric Light Department, or BELD, power plant. The plant was constructed after the town had initially purchased the property in 1892. Here's that picture from 1941 that I believe was referenced. In 1993, BELD ceased using the property for power generation and moved operations to a new site. And so the buildings on the property were vacated. Current use of the property has been limited to temporary storage of equipment and materials, and it's a staging area for town-related projects. The town conducted planning studies to determine how the property should be utilized moving forward, and it was determined that given the property's close proximity to a number of public resources like the MBTA commuter rail, the site would provide a good opportunity to convert the space to a multi-unit residential property. The property has approximately 600 linear feet of frontage on the Montequat River, which is a tributary to the Weymouth Fore River and flows into Hingham Bay.
Devin, I will help you with that. It's a frequently mispronounced word. It's
Thank you. I would appreciate it.
No problem. I figured you would. It's the Monadequat.
Fascinating. All right, I will make a note. Thank you so much.
And it is only located in the town of Braintree. So unless you had prior knowledge of it, it's very easy to make that mistake. So if you don't mind my correction, I figured that
no, the correction is much appreciated. Thank you so much.
But yes, the Monadequat River, but thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. So let's see. The goal of the proposed project is to convert the existing industrial property into a multi-unit residential property. There are currently 4 buildings remaining on the property with the associated utilities, parking, and access for the site. The foundation for the former power plant, which was raised in the 1990s, is also still present on site. So the proposed project consists of kind of 6 main elements. We have the reconfiguration of the existing driveway to provide safe site access and parking. This requires the driveway to be widened to 24 feet in width and straightened out to create a 90-degree intersection with Allen Street. Fill has to be imported to improve the grade of the driveway from greater than 12% to less than 9%. Second, we have the demolition of the existing screen house, the pipe shop, and administration buildings, which I can point out to you on the plans. These structures will be demolished to allow installation of the new building and creation of a boardwalk and open space along the river. Third, we have the renovation of the switch house. Again, we can point that out on the plan for you folks. and construction of a new building in the location of the previous power plant for use as a multi-unit residential buildings. The existing switch house will remain and be renovated in order to preserve some of the historic character of the parcel. It also reduces the impacts to the site by repurposing what is a significant structure. Fourth, we have the development of the Riverwalk and open space along the river. These amenities will replace the existing impervious structures and pavement that exists along the river. The creation of the open space will assist in improving stormwater quality and volume leaving the project site. Fifth, we have the repairs to the existing retaining walls along the river's edge, including the installation of additional walls for erosion and scour protection. The existing seawall is going to be repointed and grouted where exposed above the low tide water level. And permanent sheet pile walls will be installed in 3 locations. Last but not least, we have stormwater infrastructure improvements, including the addition of 2 new discharge outfalls. All the paved services subject to traffic will have stormwater directed to deep sump catch basins and then to a second stage of treatment through a hydrodynamic separator. And then finally discharged out of a new outfall with a check valve style tide gate. All clean roof runoff will be redirected separately to a new outfall with a check valve tide gate as well. Here we have a view of the proposed construction on site, or at least kind of an artistic rendering, if you will. So this project will include impact to 3 areas that are regulated under the Mass Wetlands Protection Act. We have riverfront area, land subject to coastal storm flowage, and coastal bank. Since the river is a perennial stream, portions of the proposed project area do fall within the riverfront area. We're proposing a total of 79,530 square feet of impact within the riverfront area. A portion of the project area also falls within the 100-year floodplain. That would be 71,518 square feet. Last but not least, on site, the coastal bank is located behind the existing retaining wall and seawall, which is the elevated landform, and below the 100-year flood elevation, where the slope ceases to be greater than 10:1. This line is consistent with the top of bank lines that were flagged as part of the wetland delineation, and we're proposing 608 linear feet of coastal bank impact for the proposed site improvements. The project team was conscious to keep work out of that adjacent salt marsh area. I've selected a few sheets from the plan set just to highlight for you. I'll just skim through them briefly. I'd be happy to bring up any specific sheets that you'd like to view more thoroughly once we're finished. Here we have the existing conditions plan, and I just took the opportunity to highlight a couple of the resource areas to make them a little more visible. In red, we have the riverfront area. In yellow, the 100-year floodplain. I apologize, they overlap just a smidge. In purple, we have your 25-foot buffer. The dark blue along the bottom is our coastal bank. Turquoise being the mean high water. That kind of light blue-gray color here along the bottom is our mean low tide or land under ocean. Orange, there's a small section of coastal beach, and green off on the left-hand side, we have our salt marsh. And this is our existing conditions plan. As we move to the next plan, this is the sediment and erosion control plan, showing that measures will be installed along these resource areas to prevent any unwanted erosion. Grading and drainage plan. This plan, I think, helps kind of show the reconfiguration, particularly of the driveway well. Again, happy to go back a little more carefully when we finish. The rendered plan, just a simplified view of how the proposed site will be laid out. And finally, the proposed planting plan, which includes an array of trees, shrubs, herbaceous species, and seed mixes. Last week, we received some comments from the conservation agent, and I'll allow Jesse Johnson, who is our engineer from Weston and Sampson, to take a moment and respond to some of these comments for you folks. Jesse, are you available?
Thank you. Hi again, Jesse Johnson with Weston and Sampson. I'm the civil engineer for the project, and we did receive comments from your agent regarding the project as presented so far. We also recently got peer review comments regarding the stormwater from Merrell Engineering. We just got those yesterday. We're reviewing those as well. We plan to address everything as it's been submitted to us. Running through these, I could do that this time if you'd like, or if you'd like me to wait until the commission has some more time to digest it, it's up to you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Typically, we do go through the comments. I was actually going to ask that you do a formal response, which I assume that you will be doing anyways in
Yes.
writing. But where you, and just potentially to wait and do that, so we could move along more quickly potentially and address specific concerns. However, I see that you have the comments up on screen and you seem prepared to address them. So if you want to touch on each of them, I don't think that's a problem and can only be helpful if that's right with the commission.
Yeah, and I think maybe
Great.
it'll be good, obviously, too, if you guys go out to see the site and some of the stuff will
Exactly.
become more clear. But I can offer up some initial thoughts on this.
That would be helpful, right? Understanding that you may have more detailed, responses or information to share, that's okay.
Yeah, and I think number two, especially, if I'm understanding the area of concern, which would be on the westerly side of the site where there's an existing bank that's not well stabilized right now. And we had looked at potentially using something like a riprap to stabilize it more, but it's not at even a one-to-one slope. It's even more vertical than that in a lot of areas. So in order to use something like a riprap, you would have to bring in fill or excavate material out in order to get a more reasonable slope. So in lieu of that, we had proposed putting in a sheet pile retaining wall across that whole side of the site inland a little bit farther than the edge of the actual bank. And the thought being that would probably be the least intrusive, and it would also allow for more permanent protection long-term than doing just a simple riprap. But that's something I think when we go out in the field, you'll be able to see that a little bit better and we can discuss it in more detail. Number three, the alternative lawn. We can certainly talk to the landscape architect about that. I know their intent with the 3 panel areas that are designated for lawn adjacent to the Riverwalk were to have some areas for congregation and to have some areas for people to lay out a blanket or just have some time sitting around. If there's an alternative to lawn that would still allow those functions to happen, I think they'd be open to it, but I would want the landscape architect to weigh in on that. The sewer manhole, that is certainly something everybody is aware of, but I believe that's something the DPW is still looking at and addressing with the DEP on how to long-term correct that issue. The tree protection standards, we understand those, and if I'm correct, I believe if there's anything 4-inch in diameter greater within a resource area, we have to mitigate somewhere on the site. What we show on our plans, essentially the whole site is a 200-foot resource area. So any existing tree on the site, I believe technically, if that gets removed, it would have to be replaced. We don't have a full quantity takeoff of all the trees over 4 inches on site. So I will do that and have that for you before the next meeting, just to make sure that we're at least proposing the 3-to-1, if you will, if that's what it ends up being above and beyond what's being taken out. Possible reuse of existing pipes to the river. Unfortunately, we can't. Those existing pipes, we don't know where they go, the condition of them, and they're not outfitted, to our knowledge, with a check valve to protect from tidal action. So we prefer to abandon those in place and put in new piping that we can essentially rely upon and know works for our intended use. The possibility of allowing for roof runoff in the landscape area. Unfortunately, the only way to do that would be to go with overland flow from the roof, which would then have to sheet across the roadway and into that area. We wouldn't be able to get it there. If we tried to do an underground system, we did look at that. We looked at a lot of different options, frankly, for stormwater mitigation. And we have a lot of restrictions on the site. One of them being over 60% of the site is filled tidelands, and DEP's BMP recommendations don't allow for infiltration within fill. We've also got groundwater that was recorded in some sections just 6 feet down. And then there was also ledge that was recorded with some borings that we did out there that was down 2.5 to 3 feet. So because of the existing restrictions, we were really limited and not able to do anything to mitigate and recharge stormwater. Just treat it and reduce it. That's basically what we came down to. Number 8, I think that falls in line too about the 63% TSS. We took the approach of doing deep sump catch basins and then a proprietary separator. The Mass DEP does not have specific testing that was done on these types of separators. So we went out of state with some old testing that's very conservative, that only gives it a 50% credit. If we went to the manufacturer, they always list that they're much higher than that. So we just listed the conservative number, which only puts us at 63. We believe it does function better than that. However, there was also a comment from Merrell Engineering to try to revisit, see if we could either treat more volume and go up to 1 inch rather than the 1/2 inch of flow over all the impervious surfaces, but also see if we can maybe improve that TSS, which I think maybe we could add in another structure or maybe get a bigger structure and to try to improve upon that. So I'll take a look at that. And then number 9, we take no objection to that being added in. And then number 10, asking to have potentially a conservation restriction put over the walkway. Not an issue as far as we're concerned either. We are going to look to propose to have an easement put over the walkway to make sure in perpetuity that the town has and the public have access to that area. And we'll propose an exhibit that we'll share with not only you guys, but also planning board, and make sure everybody weighs in on what the limits are going to look like for that easement. And then down the line language can obviously be discussed and worked out. But that's really it. I think I should mention the other comments that we saw related to stormwater, we didn't think were anything we can't address or we can't make improvements to the design to take care of. So we're looking forward to taking care of those next week, actually.
We are aware that a DEP file number hasn't been received yet. And so with that, I want to thank you for allowing us to speak. And we can certainly turn to any page of the plan set that you might be interested in. And myself and Jesse can take any questions that you might have.
Okay, thanks to both of you. Well, to all 3 of you for your presentations. I want to give Kelly an opportunity to comment first if you'd like to. You may not want to at this stage, but I'd just like to give you an opportunity to do so.
Yeah, I would just note, I think it's important for the commission to see this site for many reasons. One is, coastal delineations are unusual, and I think it's good to have more eyes on that. And it's just a unique site. It's an interesting site. And so I strongly recommend a site visit. And I think some of these items tonight we can discuss further.
Great, thanks, Kelly. I definitely agree with making a site visit. And I know typically during the last year or so, we've done a lot of site visits where we just all went independently, although there have been some where the commission has gone as a group. This seems to me like a site where it would be beneficial to go together, whoever can make it. We, don't hold our site visits as public hearings or meetings with any discussion, but just to make sure that we're looking at, we don't miss anything that, Kelly thinks that we should see, and to help orient ourselves to the site. I think it would be great to plan something. Typically, rather than struggling to come up with a date in the Zoom meeting that works for everybody, we let Kelly do the hard work of emailing folks to find a date and time. So if that approach works, we'll handle it in the same way as we have in the past. Okay, I see a couple of nods. All right, so I'll just turn it to the commission for any questions or comments that you want to make at this time. Yes, Hung, I see your hand.
I do. I have 2 questions. One is the check valve that is proposed at the new outfall by.
Oh, Hung, it looks like you are muted. You were unmuted and then muted again. There you go.
Okay, there you go. Turn on. Can you direct me to the drainage plan, please? Okay. So I'm specifically looking at drainage manhole 5 with a check valve.
Let's see if we can track that down. Jesse, I might need your help finding it on this, but let's see if we can track it down.
What was your question while we're looking for it?
Okay, my question is, with the check valve being there, I don't know what your treatment on the outfall would be, or duck bill, whatever, but I'm just afraid that with high tide coming in, you may have some salt water coming into that drainage manhole, then eroding that check valve. So then at which point you will basically have no way to mitigate for whatever you intended that check valve to be. So it's something that if you would like, change it over to a plug instead. That will be more reliable, and because you can't really erode, it's something more mechanical than versus something like this where you have to oil. So that's my primary concern, especially when you are in the coastal area and you have no proposal where that outfall treatment's going to be like. So at this point, it's just basically a drainage outfall pipe coming out of a retaining wall at that location.
Yeah, what we're looking to do on that is really just provide some protection, obviously, to the infrastructure that's being proposed, the catch basin and the hydrodynamic separator and all the pipe network, preventing obviously any water from coming into it from the river itself. We've certainly, our office has done a lot of work in and along the coastal area and designed actual tide gates and check valves that dump into the ocean. We're working on a project in East Boston right now, doing something similar. So we have examples of ones that we can use in that type of application. I'll drill down on that a little bit more and just show you a detail that hopefully alleviates your concern that saltwater will not be an issue with it for long-term erosion or have any issue with it. I think a simple check valve rather than a full tide gate, we think in this application is probably sufficient, but I can follow up on that for you.
Thank you.
May I ask what's currently proposed for the check valve? We're not seeing it on the plan.
Yeah, we give just a proprietary name for it. I didn't provide the actual detail itself, but I can do that for you.
That'd be great. My next question is the hydrodynamic separator. As a stormwater practitioner myself, I am aware of the hydrodynamic separator. And I see that within your O&M, you are proposing to have it quarterly or every three times a year. Especially when, once again, it is that close to the coastal area. I am extremely concerned that it may not function well, and the maintenance of it may not provide the water quality treatment that we see. So I would like some kind of support that maybe you look at it more often than not. Similar to a catch basin right now, you have catch basin that you're inspecting 4 times a year, and the stormwater separator is more complex in a catch basin.
Yeah, we can roll in the inspection schedule to be concurrent with the catch basins. I think that makes good sense.
Okay.
It'd be the same equipment that would be servicing it. They wouldn't have a clamshell do the catch basin. If you have a separator on the site, you'd have a vacuum do both.
Yep.
So yeah, we can change that in the O&M to make it coincide.
Great.
Yep.
That's my comment.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Pham. Other questions or comments? And people who've already spoken can chime in again, of course, as well. It's pretty open discussion at this point. Maybe while we're on the stormwater topic, I had a couple of comments too. I found the comments so far very, very helpful. I would say that I'm happy to hear that you are planning to look back and see if you can increase that TSS removal rate. I understand that, the manufacturer does give a higher rate for the proprietary unit. In my opinion, that the 50% is appropriate. It's usually the highest that we see for these types of proprietary systems with the third-party testing, at least in my experience. So I think I appreciate that you did provide that third-party documentation. But, you know, it would be ideal to get to the 80%. And I'm not sure exactly what additional units, you know, would be appropriate to include here. You know, a larger size unit might be enough. You know, I know that there are, you know, filters and oil and grit separators and other things that are sometimes added to the treatment chain that may be appropriate. I would be remiss if I didn't ask about LID. The Stormwater Handbook requires consideration of LID. I understand that being low impact development. I understand that there's a significant reduction in impervious area and that the site is somewhat limited, but you know, maybe there are opportunities for either some smaller BMPs, some tree box filters, or you know, a small bioretention area. So I just asked for some consideration of that. And then I had a question about the rooftop runoff. I hadn't even considered the possibility that there might be filled tidelands, which makes perfect sense. But is it not an option to remove the fill and then to bring in the suitable soils?
So it potentially in most sites, but also to add another wrinkle to this particular site is that it had significant soil remediation done on it because of a spill that was part of the old operation. Now the site has since been deemed clean, but it's not advisable to remove a lot of material from the site or frankly try to dig up too much of it. So the recommendation of the LSP when this was closed off was to try to cap the site as much as you can rather than excavate it down, which is what our grading does, enough to establish reasonable grades for the parking and access. And then we also were very careful with our grading design. We didn't want to send overland runoff towards the wall, the seawall itself, and have water potentially cascading over the wall. We also thought about trying to do something in now the 3 panels of the grass areas that are landscaped now. We looked at maybe having those depressed and maybe those could function as rain gardens or some type of LID. That was the first approach I took with this site. But again, because of the proximity to that seawall, we didn't want any potential of hydrostatic pressure building up behind the wall. If you've looked at it, it's a dry stacked, just long, flat granite slabs that were dry stacked. And our structural engineers looked at it and came up with a recommendation, which is a lot of the impact that we're showing here is to essentially repoint the wall and regrout it. Overall, it's not leaning. It's not in danger of immediately, falling into the river, but it needs some work done on it. And because it's a dry stack wall, we didn't want to introduce any water behind it. So, and that's really the only area, that landscape area, that we could do something like that. And again, that's pretty close to the wall. So we said, all right, well, let's reduce impervious coverage. Let's go at it that way. Let's try to create green space. So we reduced the coverage by 15,000 square feet plus or minus, which allowed us to reduce the rate and the volume of runoff leaving the site by about 15% from what it's doing now. And then obviously we also said, let's try to treat it as best we can. Let's keep the roof runoff separate because it's clean. And then anything that's hitting pavement where vehicle traffic is hitting, let's make sure that goes through its paces and gets treated. We can up that treatment, try to go to 80%, and we'll take a crack at that. But I'm gonna have a hard time finding an area where I could actually do some recharge.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Johnson. The explanation was really helpful. I understand it's a tough site in some ways, but
a lot of ways.
Yeah, a lot of ways. And I should have remembered the contamination because I recall that permitting for some of that work coming through. So, well, whatever improvement you can make with TSS would definitely be good, and maybe the rest is just not going to be feasible. But I also have a couple of comments with regard to landscaping. I took a look at the landscape plan, and the species that are being proposed look really great. It's always nice to see a truly native plant palette with almost no cultivars, which is great. I feel like there may be opportunity to have a little more of the area between where the walkway and the seawall have even just a narrow vegetated buffer, something that doesn't necessarily obstruct views. And I'm not suggesting for the entire length of that walkway. I know it's nice for the public to be able to be right, at the water's edge and getting that feel and that view. But I wondered if there may be even a little more opportunity, perhaps along the one long stretch in the center where the walkway is right against the seawalls, some sort of low dense vegetation and a narrow strip between that and the seawall, I think could be really beneficial for the resource area. And then, I should say I agreed with all of Kelly's comments. I know you gave some initial responses. I definitely would love to see some alternatives to lawn, at least in that 25-foot buffer. I know it's important to have some recreational space. There are some low-lying ground covers that might work as an alternative, or perhaps that could be reconfigured in some way. And then, I'm excited to get out and see the site. I've been walking by it for years and years and years. But, it'd be great to just take a close look at the resource areas and get excited about what's to come. I definitely would like to take a close look at the coastal bank. I'm a little concerned about the slope stabilization. I understand the challenges that you said, but that coastal bank, currently we want to see how is it functioning currently in terms of the protected interests of the act, and can we make sure that those are maintained going forward? And I think it's something to basically revisit, but seeing the site will probably help an awful lot with kind of figuring that out. And then the last thing I want to mention, I'm so pleased to hear that everyone is amenable to having that walkway publicly accessible in perpetuity. I know with all the various permutations of plans for the site, that was always a goal. And so it's really great to not have to have that fight now, so to speak. It's so nice you're coming in even amenable to a conservation restriction. That's wonderful. This may be a little bit ahead of things, but I feel like there is a great opportunity for maybe an educational signage at one point along that walkway. And this is an even historical signage, though I will end at that because that's obviously outside of our jurisdiction, but clearly there's some great opportunity for that. All right, that's all I had at the moment. Are there any other, Commissioner Pham, excuse me.
Sorry, I mean, in terms of TSS, how amenable is the developer in utilizing porous pavement versus hard mixed asphalt?
So I know there's a lot of different schools of thought on porous pavement. I am for it if the entire site is going to incorporate it. Because in reality, what I've seen over the years with porous pavement is if you've got a guy that comes in with the plow truck and the sander that's not really paying attention, he's going to turn the sand on to do the whole site. He's not going to turn it on and off through certain sections of the asphalt that are porous and some that aren't. So long-term operation I see as a problem with porous asphalt unless you get buy-in and the whole facility is that way. If you want to also do it here, again, we run into the issue that you've got to take out at least 2 feet plus of material underneath the porous asphalt to put in the right layering of aggregate to make it effective. So again, because of high groundwater, high ledge, and also fill that could be suspect, we elected not to look at that.
I don't see any boring day plan here. What is the groundwater level?
The borings are shown on the existing condition plan, which was one of the first sheets on our, and they note on their groundwater elevation, and then they note depth down to ledge. And most of the borings are within the footprint of the old building. And we're actually going to go out. We show some proposed additional boring locations on this plan. We'd like to go out and do some additional boring closer to the seawall and the coastal bank to make sure that our assumptions for putting in additional sheet piling for erosion protection and for retaining soil, that they're not going to have any problems there. They don't know what that material is like, especially as you get right up to the coastal bank and the area that's seen at the bottom of the screen there where it goes off to the existing riprap. That's a tough area to kind of, if you look at it when we walk the site, you'll see very challenged to know what kind of material you're gonna have there, that they wouldn't run into a lot of obstructions when they try to put in sheet piling. And then they're also looking to do some more testing along Allen Street to confirm conditions. But out of the dozen plus borings that we've done so far on the site, they're all pretty consistent with showing some higher groundwater and some refusal at depths as much as 6 feet, or shallow, I should say, 6 feet.
Yeah, I apologize for not getting so used to architectural civil plans in comparison to transportation. So
Oh,
it's,
that's okay.
it's a huge learning curve for me right now. And if I may also ask, because I'm seeing the elevation for your oil separator, and I have a little bit of question in terms of the invert in and out for your oil separator coming out of the garage. So if you can go to, if anything, page 281 of the
281.
of the your NOI application with the plan. So that is sheet number.
Are you referring to a standard detail? The oil
No,
water separator?
I'm referring to utility plan.
You said it's 281 of the whole application?
Correct.
Yeah, right. I've got that pulled up here. I think we can do that.
Yeah.
Let's see.
This is when Zoom is actually very helpful.
Does this look like the sheet you're looking for?
Yes, if you zoom into that little blob by the staircase there.
The little blob by the
By the
staircase.
staircase in the middle of,
Let me,
so right there, you have your
Yeah.
oil water separator, and your invert in is 4.61, but your out is 0.79, 76. I'm sorry, I'm dyslexic.
Oh, yeah, that looks.
Can you educate me?
No, yeah, that's definitely a fat finger on the keyboard. We'll correct that Scrivener's error.
Okay. I was like, wait, how does that work?
Yeah, that's a big drop. We'll take care of that.
Okay, thank you.
Good catch. Thank you.
Thank you for catching that. I'd say that you're adapting just fine.
Yeah, I can review my plans anytime.
I'm just so used to it.
Commissioner Pham, did you have other questions or comments?
No,
at this time?
that's it. I'm kind of sad that that it's not amenable for porous pavement, and I'm also surprised that the practice for snow and ice removal is sand in this area. I personally don't recommend having sand as a treatment for snow and ice. And if anything, it would just be salt. I mean, the Munkawick, how you pronounce that again? I'm sorry, I just moved to Braintree. I cannot pronounce that river.
Inadequate.
Inadequate. The Inadequate River is kind of brackish anyway. So in terms of salt treatment, it shouldn't be an issue.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely, if you want to do TSS, management, source management is a primary point you want to look at. So
Sure.
I would not, if anything, if Liz, you put it in condition, is sand treatment within this area should not be the primary treatment for snow and ice.
So that's a really good point. And we have these standard conditions for both chemical prohibitions, that are herbicides, fertilizers, pesticides, that kind of thing. Or I think we may allow fertilizers slow release. And then we also have a similar condition for restrictions on the de-icing chemicals. And I seem to remember this coming up in the past where someone said, wait a minute, this is a coastal property. It really doesn't matter quite so much here. Kelly, do you remember if we've modified that condition?
Yeah, I was trying to
I
think
think
about
we
that.
have.
Yeah, I mean, typically we prohibit sodium chloride and allow limited calcium chloride, but I'm honestly not sure in a coastal environment how much it matters.
Seem to matter quite so much. Whereas the
Sorry, I brought
sand,
something
it's the
up.
lesser of two evils normally. Here, the sand is probably the bigger evil. So yeah, I'd definitely be amenable to tweaking our condition.
Thank you. Yeah, that's my fight within the regulatory side is we don't use sand within our roadway, and I don't think a private developer should also.
Well, so maybe, you know, if that, well, I know it was a little bit more than that for why the porous pavement may not work, but factor that in. You know, if we prohibit sand, that does eliminate or at least minimize the chances of that being a problem.
Yeah.
You know, it would be a great spot to have the porous pavement. Nice visible site like this.
And I'm done with my comments. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So let me take a minute here to see if there are any members of the public that have been patiently waiting to comment. Don't think I see anyone. No. Okay. So no one this evening. It seems to me that we're in a position to continue the public hearing. And Kelly, are you okay with just reaching out to us by email regarding a site visit?
Yep.
It seems to me that we should probably do it. You know, it's a month till the next hearing, but maybe we should try for something in the next couple of weeks so that the team has more time to respond. Not that we'll be having any discussion, but even if there are observations, you know, made at the meeting, or, you know, you think of something else that you want to relay, gives a little more time for the team to respond.
It seems that the times we've tried to do it recently, the Friday mornings or Thursday mornings worked well. Is that just to get
Yeah.
a sense?
Personally, Friday mornings work very well. I don't know how other schedules are at this point.
Yeah, so I'll try to set that up as soon as possible.
Okay, thanks. Last opportunity to make a comment or question on this project, commissioners. Okay, well, last opportunity at this meeting, I should say. So thank you all so much. I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to continue the public hearing for 4 and 44 Allen Street. DP file number is pending to our October 7th meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Hayward. Commissioner Francis?
Yes.
Commissioner Pham?
Yes.
And Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous, 5-0-0. We will see you all, well, sooner than a month. We'll see some of you, I presume, and then we'll see everyone again in a month.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, good evening. All right, so that concludes our public hearings. And we have a few other business items. So first we have returning an as-built guarantee for 45 Parkside Ave. And a little unusual in that it was for an RDA, but I kind of remember this one coming through and the rationale made good sense. So Kelly's recommending that we go ahead and release that as built. Is there any comment or question on that from the commission? Okay, then I'll go ahead and make a motion to return the as-built guarantee in the full amount for 45 Parkside Ave. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, and I should have said the full amount is $1,500. And is there, thank you, Commissioner Hayward, for seconding. Commissioner Francis?
Aye.
Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
And Kelly, can you help me out procedurally? I assume, given the amount of time, that Commissioner Pham could vote on this because there's no guarantee that it would be the same membership as when we issued the permit, correct? Okay, so Commissioner Pham.
Yes.
Great. Okay, so 5-0-0. That motion has passed and the guarantee will be returned. All right, so our next item, the next two items, I would suggest that we kind of take these together. This is the conservation trail markers and the Cranberry Pond trail map. Kelly, unless you think we should discuss them separately. I know that they both pertain to the Cub Scout proposal that was discussed at the last meeting.
Eagle Scout.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I guess this is because I have a Cub Scout. I'm used to saying that. This would be quite a project for a Cub Scout. Okay, thank you very much. The Eagle Scout project. So I did listen to the audio on this and read, over the materials. It was hard to catch all of the discussion from the scouts, but I gathered enough and read some stuff that Kelly sent along. So I have a couple of thoughts, but let me open up to everyone that was there. It sounded like it was well attended, and kudos to the scout for proposing and the project and wanting to do so many different things. Usually you get one of those if you're lucky.
I will note that Quinn is on the call. He has his hand raised.
Oh, okay. I guess I'm not seeing the phone attendees. Thank you so much for pointing that out. Okay. So Brian, would you like to go ahead and reintroduce yourself and make any comment before we start our discussion?
Yeah, can you guys hear me? I don't know.
Yes, we can hear you.
I don't think my camera is.
Yeah, your camera's not on, but we can see your label of who you are, which is really helpful.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I don't know why it's not. I don't know if I have not access or not, but my name's Quinn. I'm doing my project at Cranberry Pond. Last month, I got my proposal signed by the commission, but there were two kind of pending items, which were the trail markers and the trail or the pond map. So.
Great, thank you so much. I hope you heard my introduction. I'm sorry that I couldn't make the last meeting and hear your presentation, but I just want to say thank you so much for your interest.
Yeah.
You know, doing a project in our conservation land and helping out. It's much appreciated. Yeah, I don't have any comment on what has already been approved. It all sounded terrific to me. Do commissioners have comments specifically on the trail markers or the trail map? I know there's some questions about them, and I mean,
I can share my screen so we can.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Am I sharing yet?
Yes, so we can see the two, you know, the current trail map and then the proposed new map, which has some additional trails and some different markings, you know, that would potentially be incorporated.
So
yeah, Quinn, did you want to say anything about these?
Yeah, with the new map, we have different trail symbols, which is kind of the main reason. But I also identified two new trails. Well, not really new, but they're in there. They just aren't really marked. So I'm hoping to get that approved today.
Yeah, I see we have the white trail has been added, the Scouting Way trail.
Yeah, I have the two new ones are the Scouting Way and the Bog View Way.
And the Bog, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay. Kelly, would this be a good time for you to, or well, I know there's others that I think all of us have been to Cranberry Pond, but I guess I'm just thinking, Kelly, because I know you sort of have been out there a lot and worked on the initial map. Can you or somebody else give us an input in terms of if all of these are official trails or if they've been established just by users?
Right, the white trail, I think we were trying to discontinue that. And then the other trails, what's labeled as a Scouting Way and the Bogway. I think the Scouting Way is a trail that's been made either by ATVs or mountain bikers, and it's ever been an official trail. It hasn't been marked. We haven't included it on any maps. Same with the Bogway. And I have a little bit of concern about adding more trails out there, especially you know, I think it's good to kind of limit the impact of people to the main trails and not start, you know, having more trails all over the place, more impact on the conservation area. So I'm a little concerned about formalizing what are now informal trails.
What about the little green trail that connects? I feel like I've walked it before.
Yeah, that's
official, right?
That's a real trail, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean that's a nice connection point if you want to go down to Holbrook.
It is, yeah.
I mean, you know, I think it's always tough, right? Because you want people to be able to explore the area as fully as possible in some ways, especially a wonderful place like this. But there is a balance between the amount of trails. And I feel like a place like Cranberry Pond, because it is, you know, an ACEC, the area of critical environmental concern, it's maybe a place where I feel even a little more sensitive to not encouraging the use of trails that, you know, not official trails, just because, you know, it's really better here to have trails that will allow you to go around the whole area, but really keep a lot of intact contiguous area, you know, outside of those trail systems. So I tend to agree with that. I don't know, do other commissioners have a different thought on that? it's not to diminish the hard work that went into, identifying these trails. I mean, depending how the commission feels, it kind of provides a nice roadmap for what are we going to monitor if we decide we really want to discourage the use of these trails. Well, they're easy now to go out and have a ranger, someone keep an eye on and potentially block off and naturalize a little bit, scatter material, that kind of thing. I don't know, what do other commissioners think about that aspect of it?
I'll give you my input, and it's
Peter, sure. I know you go out there a lot, so yeah, let's hear it.
I mean, actually, there's more trails than what he's showing out there.
I don't doubt it, sure.
And that's an issue now also at Wampatuck, and we actually, the Friends of Wampatuck, which I'm a member of, we produced the maps for the DCR, and we have the same argument about, do we show the illegal, non-permitted trails or not? And the argument we see there is, especially in Wampatuck where it's so large, is that if someone is hurt out there, you have to get the information to the police or the DCR to locate these people. And if you're not showing all the trails, then they may be on a trail and, oh, I'm on this trail that goes from here to here. And the rescue or people going out there look at the map and go, I don't see that trail. I don't know where it is. So there's that issue of having, better representation for a safety reason. But then also there's the thing, you don't want people making more and more trails out there. And that's been very, a much larger problem with the COVID restrictions and everything. And these kids don't have anything to do. So they're out there making new trails, and in Wampatuck, they're doing jumps and crazy stuff that, you wouldn't believe. So I think it's a good blend here on what we're showing. I mean, my question is there a process to get a trail approved, or if someone came out, I want to put a trail from here to here, who would be responsible for approving that? The Concom?
Yes. I'm going to I'm trying to go to our open space regs because I don't think we address that directly, but I know that we talk about new trails. Give me just a second and I'll read you the language if it's helpful. We revised these regs back in 2019. And I remember this coming up. Sorry, my internet's being super slow and I don't recall where I have this document saved on my hard drive. So while that's loading.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's not too material to this.
Yeah, I mean, that could be a separate conversation. I mean, I guess the short answer is, I think it would be us, right? Like we're the body that is responsible for managing this.
Let me
land.
ask
We can
this.
sort of set our own rules for whether we wanted to accept other trails. I mean, I think if we were going to do that, presumably we would want to, whoever wanted to, give the opportunity to go out and have a look at the trails and.
Yeah, but let's not belabor that right now.
Yeah.
Because I guess I want to get, Kelly, are you not happy with showing, I mean, is that your only objection to this new trail map?
Well, that, and I'm not so sold on having all these shapes, because just the keeping up with it, right? I mean, then when we need to replace one, we have to make sure, we don't have a supply of carved shapes, we have to find someone to carve a shape. It's just the keeping up with the long-term maintenance of this is, we're really limited with our resources and our capacity. So the more things are just consistent between all the conservation areas with the markers and the process, it's just a lot easier from the staff end.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's interesting. I actually, in some ways, I really like the idea of different shapes, and it's very unique. I've never seen any markers like that. I know there can be a concern when you hammer like a wooden marker into a tree that's up against the tree, that it collects moisture behind it, and that can cause some damage to the tree over time. I've seen old markers do that. So yeah, I tend to agree though that
Oh, sorry.
Really
Yeah,
great.
no, with these markers,
Yeah, go ahead.
so these are gonna have around like a 3-inch screw. And so they're gonna go about 1 inch into the tree, and the trail markers are gonna be about 1 inch in width. So there will be about 1 inch of space in between the tree and the trail marker, and that'll provide for 5 to 10 years of growth for the tree.
You know, I think you might have mentioned that at the last meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for thinking of that. That was a carefully thought of. So maybe that piece of it would be less of a concern. But I just know from, you know, as many of you know, I work in conservation for another town, and I agree with Kelly that it can be really tough to manage conservation land where you have different, you know, trail markers, and the consistency piece is really invaluable. I mean, I have to admit, I tend to like the overall format of our initial map, and I like the idea of, you know, being consistent. Maps are really hard. You know, if you're gonna update one, I feel like it's hard to do that and then not update all of them. I feel like it's really easier for users to have that consistency. You know, we have the trail guide published already. You know, I'd almost like to, you know, do that across the board if we're going to do that. And if we decide that we want to add some of these new trails that have been identified by Quinn, which is really helpful, you know, maybe having Kelly in her free time or as she has time, incorporate those potentially into the existing format. That would be my personal preference. But you know, another thing I was thinking of, Peter, your comment about safety is one that I really hadn't thought of. And, you know, whether that means we incorporate these trails or not, it seems to me that there would be value in having this map available, even if it's just for internal use for that sort of a situation, you know, where there's some documentation. Maybe it's not the official map, or either that, or there's trails marked, but they are clearly like hatched off as closed, you know.
I mean, in this situation where there really isn't a administrative body overseeing this property all the time, it would be, you'd have to have, you know, all the trails at the entrances, you know, so that someone coming up to it could say, you know, it's not like they can call a ranger or you know, the police department, unless the police department had, you know, or the fire had copies of this map.
Right. That's
That would
what
be
I
the
was
way to
thinking.
handle it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Maybe emergency personnel would have could have a copy or be provided with a copy.
Yeah.
Well, by the way, my computer finally loaded, and in our conservation land rules and regulations, we have number 7, no new or existing trails shall be cut or marked without the written permission of the Conservation Commission.
Figured that.
So I'm not really sure who we give written permission to if it's a trail that's just been developed. We just write a letter for the file, for our own file. But there's a mechanism. Let's see.
Well, Holbrook uses just painted squares or triangles, different colors on trees and rocks is their method for delineating all their trails.
That's actually my preferred. There's I can't remember what organization does it, like some sort of official trails organization. I'll find out. That's their recommended method, is painting the blazes on. You can remove like that little outer layer of bark, not into the living tissue, and just paint it. But before Kelly passes out, I'm not suggesting that we suddenly switch everything to that. But if we were going to do something totally different, maybe that would be the.
Yeah, that's actually my preferred method too. It's just so simple, and anyone can do it, and we don't need. But we went down this road like, I don't know, 15 years ago or 12 years ago with these markers, so it might be worth reconsidering it. But I think it is important to be consistent.
It sounds like that might be more than it, that sounds like a much larger project potentially, because it would be considering all the properties.
Yeah.
I tend to not put people on the spot too much, but just since I'm not certain, what the best path is forward, I'm just going to ask if Chris or Diane, Hung, I'll let you off the hook this time, first meeting and all, but Diane or Chris, do you have any input on this topic?
So the input I had at the last meeting there about the marker, it's an interesting way of doing it. I understand where Kelly's coming from. It's definitely a maintenance point of view. It's perspective. From being a tree guy, a screwing tree is screwing a tree. It's not a good thing. But, this is also, something a little bit more unique in being that it's an Eagle project. This gentleman wants to put some effort into this, and, it's something you don't typically see with these different shapes, especially where they're going to be 3D physical shapes. Yeah, I'm kind of, I get torn in a couple different ways here. I like the idea, but I want the simplicity, and I don't want the screws in the tree, but spray paint on a tree isn't any good either. So yeah, I'm kind of bouncing around in my brain here.
May I suggest something?
Of course, you're welcome. You're welcome to. I just didn't want to put you on the spot.
No, I mean, I do a lot of hiking and stuff, and we do have this app. I forgot the app name, but it basically tracks the show you the trail, the length, etc., within the app. Can you? I may have to look up the app name and get back to you on it, but I mean, this is great if you impose your work onto the app, so it'll be more virtual. So whoever is hiking that trail, they'll have that app. Maybe you can have the QR code in the parking lot and say, hey, if you want to, see some new trails, scan this QR code, get it on the app. It's on the cell phone, and people can walk that trail without having to do the marking as such. Because the GPS will, within your cell phone, can track where you're at within that area. I'm assuming that I've never walked this trail before, and never have gone down to this pond. But my assumption is you still have some reception. It's an idea.
Well, there are a number of apps that do that. Trail Forks, actually, most of these trails are on Trail Forks. And you can go to that site and see all the trails on our, probably more than what's shown here. But then you have the people that just don't have the cell phone or the savvy to use those, and you have to be aware of that too.
I keep forgetting about
These
that.
are really good ideas, and I didn't realize that all these were already available on an app.
Yeah.
Wasn't a QR code part of the project, that this would link to a map on the website?
Yeah, I was planning to do a QR code to one map on somewhere, whether it's
Like at the
old one or the
kiosk
new
or
one.
something.
Mhm.
But I think that's a great idea. I've seen that added in a couple of places, and it gets very well received generally.
So I just took the liberty of going on alltrails.com and searched the Cranberry Pond, and more or less what you propose here as the map is on our trail website for the Cranberry Pond Conservation Area. So I guess it's just as easy as a QR code by the parking lot.
So in other words, we can't really decide to just take these trails off. They're already, other people can identify them.
And I'll tell you that the DCR in Wampatuck had closed some trails, and 3 months later, they're back open. I mean,
I think it seems to me that there's a couple of things going on in our discussion. One is the Eagle Scout project and what the commission wants to approve, allow, support. But then secondarily, it seems like we're also talking about just a general land management issue. What do we want to do about trails?
Yeah.
And maybe that's something that we need to take a little more time to think about and decide. I'm not sure. My initial thought is, no, it's not official. Just get it off the trail, be done with it. It's an ACEC, but that's not necessarily a fair way to approach it. You know, I feel like it would be better to go take a little time and look at the trails. You know, without, I know I've walked many, if not all of these, but, you know, for example, the Bogview Way, you know, so it parallels another trail. Maybe that's not so critical as the Scouting Way, which, you know, connects to larger sections. So, you know, there are ways to look at it, but I would suggest that the commission sort of hold off on making it a final decision on those extra trails right now until we have time to
Yeah.
evaluate it a little more carefully, since we're not hearing a
Right.
quorum of members that are advocating really strongly one way or the other. Many of us have mixed feelings, but then I think we do need to make some sort of a decision about the markers in the map, just so that we can give Quinn some direction. And one question I have that's not exactly related to this specific proposal, but, and I don't know, maybe it's a question for you, Quinn, is if we say, you know, no, thank you, we don't actually want to do these trail markers at this time, or, you know, perhaps not the map. Does that mean that you no longer have an Eagle Scout project, or are you okay with all the other work you proposed, which to me seems like plenty of work? I mean, but I want to make sure that you're you know, that you're going to meet whatever requirements you have. And I simply am not savvy enough about the scouting process to know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so
I mean, I know you're doing work on kiosks and, you know, there were quite a lot of other things, boardwalks. I mean, I've seen Eagle Scout projects come through with less than that even and be approved, but I just want to make sure that, you know, that wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, I'm not really too concerned about the 2 new trails. That was just something extra I wanted to add, but I was kind of hoping that the new trail markers would be approved, but if not, that's all right as well. So,
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Just, you know, I want to just make sure that you do have a successful project. You've already put in a lot of work.
yeah.
Peter?
Can I suggest maybe it may be not so much of a burden if we reduce the number of shapes we use? I mean, you could have a square white trail and a square green trail, you know, I mean, and so it'd be easy to keep up with the number of markers. And if, you know, a number of future markers were provided under this project for replacement, may make it easier for us.
Yeah.
Well, we've got 4 official trails.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just the 4 official trails and the others just don't get marked.
Yeah, so that could be an option. Yeah, obviously we could not mark some of them or mark them the same. Hopefully people will know, but yeah, that's about it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess I'm still a little bit unsure of what the will of the commission as a whole is. I just feel like we're all there's a bit of uncertainty perhaps about how to proceed. But I'm similarly a little bit conflicted on it, but I'm leaning towards holding off on new trail markers just for the consistency piece, largely for that reason, and maybe doing some more evaluation of trails out there. So that's kind of where I'm landing. Peter, I definitely hear what you're saying about, you know, the value of something, you know, a little different and clear out there. I know, Chris, you were a bit on the fence. Diane, did you want to comment?
I just like the simpler map better. Just where the Conservation Commission is responsible and we're all volunteers. I think a simpler map makes sense.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful. Did anyone else have another comment on the map piece of it? I mean, I guess really they kind of go hand in hand, don't they? Go for the markers. Must be after 9. It's getting late. My brain is getting muddled.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if somebody, I guess we could take, we could take a vote on it. But it seems to me, I'm not quite hearing that we have the solid support. I don't know that we have the solid support of a quorum of members to move forward with this. But with this piece of the project, I should say, I'm trying to sort of judge what everyone has said. But if somebody wants to make a motion, to accept this part of the project, certainly we could vote on it.
So yeah, I could get rid of the 2 new trails one, or the 2 new trails, but I definitely would like to do the trail markers, because I think the ones that are there now, they're really bad. They're not in great shape. I think these ones would be a huge improvement. We would be offering extra trail markers, not just the ones that are out there. So we'll give you extra. And I think this would be a really great thing for colorblind people, because the ranger from Palmetto, not Sean, the other one, the younger man, he went out there and he got lost because they're just tiny little dots with a color in them, and he's colorblind, so he got lost in it. So that's definitely a big thing to consider as well.
That is a good point. I'm not sure what's typically done for that, but it is a good point. Kelly, do you have any different opinion if it was just the 4 official trails that were marked, or do you sort of, or no, do you have the same opinion?
I have the same opinion.
Okay. Well, I hate to see.
We could move forward with the new map with just the 4 trails, and then in the future, add to it. Yeah.
We absolutely can add to things. I just don't see, unless we want to do the new trail markers, I don't really see the need for a new map. Personally, I strongly prefer the current map. Again, I don't mean to be negative in any way, because I recognize it's a lot of work, but I like the consistency with our other maps and the sort of the consistency with our GIS symbology, who may be familiar with. I don't know, that's just my opinion. Well, I think I just come back to the same point where I'm not sure that we have a quorum of the commission that wants to move forward, but we can vote on it and really put people on the spot about it, which is okay too. I'm only one voice, so, and Peter,
Can we ask that what kind of timing is our Eagle candidate looking at? Because sometimes those projects come up pretty fast, and there's there's an age situation here. So what kind of timing is he looking at?
Yeah, so I was looking to hopefully get a decision tonight, because I was planning to start on the 19th. So.
And how long do you have before you can't go for your Eagle anymore?
I don't think that's really a factor, because you can go until you're 18. I'm 15 right now. So yeah, I have plenty of time. It's just I want to try to get this done before winter.
Sure. Yeah.
thanks for planning ahead. That's helpful.
How about this? I'll make a motion that we go forward with the project with the mapping, utilizing the existing map that we have and the new trail marker designation developed by Quinn.
Okay. So we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Hayward. And I will now take, sorry, any further discussion?
Can you just repeat that?
I guess the discussion is that we're gonna add the markers, the square color coded are with the different shapes, which Quinn has a good point about colorblind people. And utilize just the existing map plan, or we can use his, but eliminate, I guess we could eliminate some of the
Yeah, I could, yeah,
illegal
definitely.
trails.
Yeah, get rid of some of the stuff.
But
Or
I got a feeling people like the existing map more than Quinn's map. Sorry, Quinn.
Yeah, no, you're good. It's just kind of a rough draft anyway.
So that was my motion.
So Peter, just to be sure that, so the motion is to use the existing map,
Yes.
correct? But the,
Yes.
and trail markers for the 4 existing official trails, if you will, or
Correct.
official trails.
Right.
Okay, and
May I
I
ask
guess
a
for
question?
completing the vote, yes, so we're sort of in the, there's a motion's made and we have a second, and we're doing further discussion before finalizing the vote. Commissioner Pham, yes, you have a question.
Do they have to be like a wooden marker? Can we paint that marker on the tree? Like, does it have to?
Paint the shape, the different
Yeah,
shapes.
yeah, I
Yes.
mean, yeah, we can paint the shapes as well.
But there'll be less material that the commissioner can have, on stock, because paint is relatively cheaper than having to buy wood and cutting it into shape and painting it.
Yeah, I
And less of
mean,
a work as well in terms of maintenance.
yeah, we can definitely paint them on. Yeah, I just thought of this. Would I be getting rid of the current ones? The current trail markers? And replacing them with the new ones? The spray paint ones, if we do spray paint? Or wood, whatever it is.
I think that's a good question. I recall from the last meeting, didn't someone bring up the fact that the current ones identify as conservation land? Which was touted as one of the benefits of the current system. Am I remembering this right? Can someone confirm?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So
Yeah.
I just mentioned that as something that I remember coming up. Maybe there'd be a benefit to keeping both.
So yeah, with the wooden ones, I can just write right on there, conservation land. But with the spray paint ones, I would imagine that would be pretty difficult.
Well, and typically for painting, it's not spray paint necessarily. You actually are, you chip away that thin outer layer of the bark so you have a smooth surface, and then you paint like a rectangular blaze. I'm not sure how easy it would be. I really like the idea, but I'm not sure how, practically speaking, how easy it would actually be to get consistent, clear shapes. Like I've done it with almost a template, so they're sort of consistent and such.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, like a stencil. Yeah.
Like a stencil, yeah, which I guess I just don't know. Yeah, maybe it would work. I'm not sure. I'm just used to doing it with where you take that little outer layer of bark off. I don't know if this is making Chris cringe or not.
Yeah.
You do not touch the phloem or the xylem.
Yeah.
So it sounds like that may work, but we're not totally sure if it would work. There's still maybe some questions.
I mean, I would be more than happy to give you a bunch of trail markers that are just pre-made that you can just put right out if any of them do happen to fall or be lost or whatever.
So that would be an advantage of the wooden
Yeah.
shapes that they could
Yeah, I
be
would
available on hand to replace.
provide.
Okay, so
I'm pretty
why
sure.
don't we-
I'm pretty
why
sure.
don't we go-
Sorry.
So I just want to not lose track to say that we do have a motion on the table from Peter to keep our current map, but utilize Quinn to do these trail markers for the existing trails. And so we had a second, we're doing further discussion, and I did have one point to raise, which is that I think our existing trail map would still need to be revised potentially to show the shapes. They're going to be painted the same colors, but the shapes. So Kelly would need to be
The base map would be.
technically able to, yeah, the base map would be the same. So Kelly would need to be, able to just technically to update the bottom.
That may not
Does
happen.
Kelly get a vote in this?
Yeah, well,
I'm sorry, Kelly, you can't vote, but I want to make sure that we're not asking you to do something that you like technically can't do.
well, I'll tell you, so my GIS software's, the base map did not transition when I got a new laptop. I think IT people can hopefully, salvage that for me, in which case I can do it at some point, but my time is limited.
Got it.
So there's a problem.
There's, it could take a while.
Yeah.
And it's also in our trail brochure, our trail guide. So, that's
Is that something we have to republish and then
at some point, yeah.
issue as well?
Yeah.
It's just not a priority at this point, there's so many things going on that it's hard to
Right.
just.
We did it in
Okay.
we did it in 2017, and it was sort of the first trail guide. So yes, it could already be revised, but it's still
Just a matter of
it's
time.
still the best option out there.
It's a matter of time and priorities and.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
but I can't guarantee, when.
okay. So at least they would be the correct colors though. And then the shapes I think would become obvious to somebody walking the trail. You would naturally see the shapes. All right, this is probably some of the most discussion we've had in a motion in a second. So again, I'm trying to be mindful that we do, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion before I continue with the vote?
So
Okay.
I think, I just have one
So
comment.
I'm sorry, Quinn. I want to, at this point, I mean commissioners.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, it's not clear because we're having such an open discussion right now. But I feel like I need to move things along one way or the other. So Commissioner Francis?
Aye.
Okay, Commissioner Pham?
Say when you don't have an opinion.
So
Abstain.
you can abstain, okay. And I vote nay, and so the vote is 3-1. Now, it has been a long time, 3-1-1. It has been a long time since this commission has had a vote with 3 people, but in the absence of any other commission specific guidance, I would say that the motion passes since a quorum of current commissioners, nope, that's not accurate. A quorum of commissioners present has voted in favor. We actually really need to sort out how we want to handle that in the future. Kelly, I am correct that we have not ever made a determination on that, right?
Right. Well, yeah, it's a little different under our bylaw, but this is not under either. So, yeah.
What does MACC recommend?
I'd have to double check.
I'm so sorry. This is not this is something that should be sorted out in advance, but it's so rare that we don't have a unanimous or close to unanimous vote. And that I'm forgetting that we now have 6 members. Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna say that sorry, Peter, what's that?
Let me say this. I'm going to withdraw my motion so that we can have a little bit more thought into this. I don't want to rush this. And we don't have like a real majority. So would anybody object to that?
I mean, I don't, not surprisingly, but I want to hear from others.
Okay.
Does anyone object to that? Okay. Okay. So it's a little unusual. We have a motion withdrawn after the vote is taken, but I mean, I don't think there's nothing that says that we can't do that, particularly since we're not in a hearing setting. And for the record, I feel somewhat bad voting nay. I want to make it clear that I'm very supportive of all your efforts, Quinn. And it is by no means to suggest that this is not, a great project overall and that your work's not really appreciated. I'm just trying to think about, some of the other aspects of it. So I guess at this point, probably it makes sense to move forward with the rest of the work, and then the commission just needs to give this some further thought.
Let's make it a commitment to give him a decision at the next hearing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's reasonable. We want to make it doable. All right, Quinn, so we'll put this on our next agenda. We'll give it some serious thought in the meantime. I would make one small suggestion that if we decide to go with marking the 4 existing trails, maybe making sure that those 4 markers are as distinct as possible from each other. So currently it would be the red trail square, yellow trapezoid, orange rectangle, which are all rather similar. Maybe then, the circle gets incorporated for one of them. For example,
diamond, circle.
And a diamond for one. Yeah. So so they're a little more distinct from each other. Square, circle, diamond, triangle, something like that.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be those 4, but just a suggestion. Maybe shapes that are easier to carve. I don't know. I'm not a carver. All right. I think this is a good conversation. I know it took some time, but there's a lot to grapple with the open space stuff. So I'm going to move on to the next agenda item, and we'll see you next month, Quinn, if you want to join us, or we'll, Kelly will keep you posted what the commission decides. All right. Thank you. So now we have approval of minutes from August 5th. I looked at the minutes, but I wasn't at the meeting, so I'll just ask if anyone else wants to make a motion to approve the minutes.
Make that motion.
Okay, thanks, Commissioner Hayward. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Francis. Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
Okay, and we're gonna have a 3-0-2 vote if I don't vote, aren't we? So this is a ministerial act of the commission, so I can actually vote. So I will vote aye as well, and then we will avoid that topic entirely. And it will be, and Commissioner Pham needs to abstain as he wasn't a member then, so it'll be 4-0-1. The motion passes. Whew. Okay, and so one final thing before we adjourn. It's not on the agenda, so it doesn't. All the details don't necessarily have to be in the minutes, but I wanted to just mention to the commission that I'm interested in putting on our next agenda a discussion of a possible commission reorganization, i.e. discussion of officers. So I note that we lost a commissioner recently who happened to also be our clerk. So we need a new clerk. Rarely does the clerk ever have to do anything. Commissioner Pham, this is not motivated by you joining the commission. We're not going to necessarily immediately put you into a role, but we are down a member otherwise. So frankly, it's really great that you decided to join us right now. It's particularly helpful. I have been chairing the commission in November, it will be 5 years. For those, no, Diane, you're the only one who remembered. This was supposed to be temporary. The mayor asked me to do it for like a few months. So we'll see how well that worked out. But I'm interested, if somebody else is interested in stepping up as chair, I would be happy to step down. I feel like there's some benefit to occasionally having a rotation. It doesn't always have to be the same person sort of leading the charge. Yes, it is a little bit of extra work to chair, but you kind of make it what it is. I tend to not be able to go a little crazy reviewing things because it's what I do for work, and I do like it. It's hard not to do it. I would still, be happy to be a member and participate. But my personal burdens are just, my time is like a little overwhelmed with everything I have going on right now, and it felt like maybe a step back would be helpful for me personally, so I don't leave the commission, which is not a threat, but it just, I would be interested in that. But I also feel like, 4 or 5 years, there's other people who have a lot to offer. I don't feel like I have to be there are commissions where somebody's a chair for like 20 years and, that works, but I don't feel like I necessarily have to do it for forever. So think about it. I mean, I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but I will say there have been some other great chairs from time to time filling in. So should anybody else be interested, consider it. So if everyone's okay with that, let's at least put it on the agenda to think about next time. Sound reasonable?
Yep.
All right, and I know it's getting late, but Tom, thanks again for joining us.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah,
that was
it's great
fun.
to have your input already. You gonna come back next month?
That was
I
fun.
hope.
Like you said, Heather, you call yourself by, you go by Liz or
Liz.
Liz. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
No problem. No,
Yeah.
it's not obvious.
You do this for a living as well, and so you kind of pick up stuff, and I was just reviewing the plans on the fly, and I was like, wait a minute, that doesn't look right. So yeah,
There's pros and cons to doing it
Right.
separately, but yeah, it can be quite rewarding, to see projects through.
yeah. So it's
One
quite
project
different.
on our agenda is right down the street from me, so I'm kind of excited about it, but I will view it within, I'm not in a butter. I will view it with a
Yeah, it is quite different.
unbiased opinion, but yeah, it can be very rewarding to see those things go through. And it's nice that we actually have a little time to do some of the land management stuff, which, we're not so overwhelmed with filings. I mean, this is a bit of a late night. I know the scout discussion just necessarily took a while, but we try to move things along. Sometimes it's just impossible.
And now what I've learned tonight as well is that I've always worn that hat as an applicant hat. And basically like, hey, this is how you be phrasing it, and this is how you used to be saying it, et cetera, et cetera. And then
Yeah.
when I review these applications, it's like, wait a minute, you're not the applicant. You shouldn't be putting your mindset that way. So I keep on to like draw myself back. And
Yeah,
you have to
shift
look
your-
at this from a different point of view. Keep
Different
looking at them from a
perspective,
different point. Yes.
absolutely. It is helpful to see it from the other side, so to speak. Well, I regret that we're not in town hall, that we could all linger and chat a little longer, but I also recognize that it's kind of late. I want to officially adjourn the meeting, and then I suppose people can stand for a minute longer if they want to chat. But I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Commissioner Hayward. Commissioner Francis?
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Pham
Yes.
and Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
See all of you.
Okay.
All right then.
Bye.
Good night.
We'll
All right,
see you.
take care for now.
See you sometime this month.
That's right.
Yes, soon.
That's right.
All right.
All right, bye.